Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Broccoli Fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Had Blood-Type Imitation Quirk? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Izuku Midoriya was a brilliant young boy. His mother and father loved him and his preschool teachers praised his genius and willingness to make friends with everyone. The young green-haired boy amazed everyone around him. However, all that was about to change. At the age of 4, when most children begin to manifest their quirks, young Midoriya had shown no sign of change, nor extraordinary power, so his mother took him to the family doctor and that is where our story begins. Doctor's office. Well, Izuku definitely has a quirk, said the doctor. Really, doctor? Izuku Midoriya's eyes shone with happiness. She had been afraid that Izuku would never develop a quirk and would be picked on by his friends because of it. Oh yes, he most definitely has a quirk. From the blood tests and x-rays that we took we can see that something truly fascinating is happening to his body. His canines seem to have grown deeper into the gum. Combined with the new muscles that seem to have grown around them, it seems possible that they will become completely retractable in the future, but that appears to be just the beginning. And with that the doctor began a lecture which could make you believe that he himself was a Midoriya. Izuku's eyes shone with joy at the doctor's lecture. He finally knew that he would have a quirk and that he could use to be a hero, but his mother looked unsure. Mr. Ishido, what do you mean that the enhanced canines are just the beginning? I don't understand, she said nervously. Mrs. Midoriya, when we ran your son's blood work we discovered something truly fascinating. He seems to have developed a new kind of blood cell. I'm sorry, a new kind of what? Inko was panicking. What was happening to her son? A new kind of blood cell, ma'am, similar in structure to red blood cells but in many ways completely different. They seem to latch onto an unknown element and absorb it, though we have been unable to discover what kind of element it absorbs just yet. Also, they seem to have some qualities of stem cells. At this point the doctor produced a large amount of paperwork and began showing Inko exactly what he meant. Izuku looked at the doctor with absolute reverence. Sir, does that mean I can be a hero like All Might? He whispered gently. Inko looked on in horror. She had no idea what Dr. Ishido was about to say, but she knew that it would either give her son hope or destroy his dreams. Listen to me, Izuku, he said as gently as he possibly could. My niece recently developed her quirk just as you are doing now, and at first she thought she would never be a hero because she believed all her quirk did was make her pink. But a few days ago we realized her quirk could do so much more, and it is my belief that your quirk will let you do same. Really? Izuku's eyes shone with hope. Really? Inko looked at the doctor with a look of gratitude. He had done what she feared she would never be able to do. Give her son hope that he could be a hero. 30 minutes later. Mustafa train station. Izuku and his mother stood hand in hand as their train slowly pulled into the station. Izuku buzzing with joy at the thought of being a hero and discovering his quirk while Inko smiled wearily. She was both happy for her son and scared by the fact that she had no idea how to help him control his quirk when it appeared, as it seemed to be completely different to her own. The train doors opened and they both stepped onto the carriage, taking a pair of seats next to the door. The train car flipped a full 360 degrees and was sent flying off the tracks. Izuku and his mother were thrown across the cabin, and when the car finally came to a halt, all they could hear was the mms of the people around them and the laughter of a villain in his moment of victory. Come on, hero, make your choice, save the civilians or capture the villain. Me. I'll do both. New Carolina smash. All Might? Izuku spoke quietly with the hope that his hero would save him, his eyes only just able to remain open. Izuku. His mother spoke weakly, barely even able to say his name. Izuku turned very slowly and painfully to face his mother. Mom. His voice was even quieter than before. He felt his eyelids drooping, getting harder to hold open. She placed her hand on his face and then everything changed. Inko's hand had been cut by a sharp piece of glass when the train car crashed, and the blood from her hand spread from her palm to Izuku's lips and past them. His fangs slid down into place, and in that moment he could feel the glass and every other small object around him. His hand reaching out to grab the All Might toy he had carried with him all day, but it was too far. He just wanted his toy. when suddenly it flew into his hand like his mother's phone did every time she pulled it to herself from across the room with her quirk. Huh, was last thought Izuku had before passing out. Lights flashed before him, Izuku's eyes barely opening for more than a few seconds at a time. All métiers are in ed civilians the train see. Who why get gooey why? E loster of BLO? He needs a transfusion. Oh dash. We don't have a suitable match. Use me, I'm a universal donor. Sir. Just do it? And then he woke up. Izuku was laying in a plain hospital bed with open blinds and machines beeping all around him. His mother was standing just outside the room talking to several doctors in the doorway while a tall, thin man wearing a suit and rectangular glasses was sitting next to him with his head leaning down towards the floor. Izuku looked around the room and apart from the man sitting next to him there was little else in there. What happened? He croaked. The man sitting next to him looked up with a start. I see you're awake. Good, the doctors were getting worried. Izuku looked at the man again. He recognized him in an instant and he couldn't believe he didn't realize who it was sooner. Essa Sir Nighteye? Izuku stammered over the next few words with disbelief. He couldn't believe it. A hero, and not just any hero but All Might's sidekick, was in the same room as him. Yes, Midoriya. Why, you know my name. Izuku stumbled over his words. Of course I do dash. But before Sir Nighteye could say any more, the doctors, his mother, everyone standing in the hall outside came rushing in. Izuku! His mother squealed as she pulled him into a tight hug. The doctors and Sir Nighteye all watching. The look of shock still filling Izuku's face from seeing Sir Nighteye sitting next to him, and the only thought on his mind in that moment was why was everyone here and why am I here? Mrs. Midoriya? The sudden and stern sound of the doctor's voice drew Izuku's and his mother's attention in. As much as I am sure you would love to talk to your son, we still need to do some tests with your son to confirm our theory. Of course, doctor. Izuku looked at his mother in confusion, not understanding what was going on around him and why there were so many doctors in the room. Mr. Midoriya, if you could look in the mirror next to you, I think you will understand. Izuku turned to face the mirror and saw a sight he had been waiting to see for his entire life. A smile erupted on Izuku's face. Fangs, he had fangs. Suddenly the doctor's voice shook him out of his thoughts and drew his attention. Yes, Mr. Midoriya, as you can see you do indeed have fangs, just as Dr. Ishido said you would. However, there seems to be an interesting part of your quirk that none of you could have foreseen or even dared to dream of. What do you mean? Izuku murmured, his mother looking at him with pride and Sir Nighteye watching the events from his chair with an expression of calm intrigue and an incredible amount of curiosity. Yes, the doctor continued, when you were brought in earlier just after the accident your mother reported that you seemed to have used her quirk and attracted your favorite toy to you when you were on the train. When she reported this we ran a blood test on the advice of your family doctor and found something quite extraordinary. A second doctor stepped up and showed him an image of what he thought looked like a red lifeboat with blue veins and spikes running along the rims. The new type of blood cell your doctor detected earlier today seems to absorb any blood cells that enters your body that don't belong to you. We believe that because you absorb the DNA of other people you may develop their quirk in addition to your own. And in that single moment Izuku's world was turned upside down. That morning he had no quirk and just a dream to become a hero, but now he had a quirk that would let him use any quirk and would give him the power and the ability to actually become a hero. And that is why Sir Nighteye is still here. The doctor said while gesturing to the hero. What? Izuku and Inko both shouted in shock. Well, yes. You see, when Izuku was injured we had ran out of blood for transplants and Sir Nighteye here offered his own blood to be used as he is a universal donor. But that would mean, Inko stammered, that your son may now have the ability to use my quirk, foresight, spoke the young sidekick. The next few minutes when as one might expect them to, first Inko fainted, the doctors rushed to her to get her steady, while Izuku sat giggling on his hospital bed with disbelief at the fact he was going to be a hero. Then Sir Nighteye got up and excused himself saying he needed to make a phone call. After the hero had returned and his mother had come to, the two adults arranged to meet up so that Sir Nighteye could teach Izuku how to use or rather control foresight. 1 week later, After the events of the last week, Izuku couldn't wait to return to kindergarten and show Bakugo his newfound quirks. Sure, he had the best week of his life learning how to use foresight with the pro hero Sir Nighteye, and he got to learn how to use his mother's quirk, but none of his friends were there. None of them got to see exactly what he could do, but they soon would. It was his first day back and Izuku couldn't wait. As he walked past the gates, he saw most of his friends huddled together just next to the big tree they always played on. "Hey Kachin, I'm back." Izuku ran towards them with a massive grin on his face, waving his hand in the air. In that moment, Izuku realized something, that someone was on the tree. He looked again and he realized that Bakugo was the person playing on the tree, and when Izuku had called out to him, he had distracted him and suddenly his grip slipped and Bakugo fell from the tree. Luckily, Bakugo was only a branch off of the ground, so he only cut his knee a little. "Kachin." Izuku ran towards his friend faster than before. "Izuku, you idiot, you caused me to fall." Bakugo Katsuki didn't care that his friend was back, only that he had distracted him. "I'm sorry Kachin, I was just excited to tell you about my quirk." Izuku had finished running towards his friend and had finally reached the tree. "So little Deku got his quirk, go on then, show us then." Bakugo stood up and brushed himself down, the blood from his knee dripping down his leg. Izuku looked around and saw a branch that had broken off from the tree when Bakugo fell. He focused on it and just like that the branch flew to his hand. His friends looked amazed but Bakugo looked dismissive. "See, I got my mum's quirk." Izuku looked proudly at his friends. "Is that all you can do? I guess you really are a Deku." Bakugo looked on unimpressed. "No, look, see, I can do so much more." In that moment, Izuku made a choice that would haunt his life for the next 12 years. Noticing the blood dripping down Bakugo's leg, Izuku bent down, picked up a drop on his finger and put it in his mouth. Bakugo gave Izuku a hard shove and pushed him away. "Why did you do that? That's gross." Bakugo shouted at him. Everyone agreed. "No, it's not, see, it's part of my quirk," Izuku argued. Izuku focused hard, his hands, outstretched palms facing up to the sky. His face contorted, focusing on one thought: explode. And then after just 2 whole minutes it happened. Small crackles emerged from his hand just like Bakugo's. Suddenly a large bang came from his hands, exploding outward with a flash of light. Everyone looked at Izuku like he had exploded their minds. Isn't that Bakugo's quirk?" the kids in the back murmured. "Yeah, how did Midoriya use it?" "How do you have my quirk, Deku?" In that second, Bakugo was scared that somehow Midoriya had stolen his quirk, the one thing that made him stand out from everyone, the one thing that would let him be hero. Scared to look, Bakugo slowly focused on his own hands and let out a small explosion followed by a sigh of relief. "Isn't it amazing I can copy quirks? Forever." Izuku looked at his friends proudly. That one word, forever, made them more amazed and scared than they have ever been before. The boy in front of them, Izuku Midoriya, could become an amazing hero with who knows how many quirks if he kept collecting and training them, but he also terrified them his quirk would make theirs look useless and less unique. Bakugo looked up from his hands with an angry look on his face. "You copied my quirk? You copied my quirk? Well, yeah, I wanted to show you what I could do, besides you were already bleeding." "What does that mean?" "I need to have someone's blood in my body to copy their quirk," Izuku tried to explain. "So you have a villain's quirk then?" The look on Bakugo's face showed it all. "No, what?" The look of betrayal on Izuku's face was displayed to all. Only a villain would steal a person's quirk and hurt them to do it. As Bakugo said this, the look of fear on everyone else's face got bigger and bigger. "Yeah, he's right. Midoriya has a villain's quirk, just look at his teeth. He could try and take our quirks." Everyone around Izuku was talking about him and his quirk more and more. "Quick, everyone run away," one person in the crowd shouted out. "But I don't hurt people and I don't steal, I only copy." The look on Izuku's face was growing more and more desperate as he was becoming more and more alone. From the corner of them playground, Bakugo looked back at his former friend and quietly he spoke to himself and to the few people around him. "Don't worry everyone, I will stop Deku. He will never hurt anyone ever again and he will never steal your quirks." Later that day. "Good afternoon, Midoriya." Izuku turned around and there stood Sir Knight. "Hey sir, what are you doing here? Remember, I am picking you up today as your mum has an extra shift." "Oh yeah," spoke Izuku distantly as he got into Sir Nighteye's car. They drove in awkward silence towards Izuku's home. "Sir, I was wondering, how How do you look further into the future than just a few minutes? Nighteye thought about it for a second and responded. Midoriya, listen to me. I know you want to learn how to use your quirk, but you need to remember knowing the future isn't always a good thing. Nighteye was trying to focus on the road while talking Izuku down from doing something he might regret. If he looks too far into the future, who knows what he could see? If he witnesses something and he can't stop it and blames himself, he may never want to use our quirk again. This thought was on Sir Nighteye's mind for the rest of journey. But sir, Izuku, still having trouble controlling his quirk, touched Sir Nighteye's arm, looked into his eyes in the mirror, and then saw everything Nighteye had been trying to stop him from seeing. It was just flashes like an old-fashioned film roll from a pre-quirk era. Just instances of time flashing before his eyes, but one stood out to him above all others. It was Sir Nighteye standing on a hill of scrap in a demolished street. He stood there crying, watching a figure standing triumphant in an oversized suit that was hanging off of him. The figure stood over a man in a suit, crumpled metal around his head. He turned to a news camera and said 4 words, but Izuku couldn't hear them. The film roll ended and Izuku was back in the car looking at Nighteye. They had arrived. What did you see? Nighteye spoke softly. Based on how long Izuku had used his quirk, he knew he had seen the distant future. I saw a man, Izuku stuttered. You were both on a destroyed street. He looked like a skeleton with a hero costume hanging off him. He had won a fight against a man in a suit. Nighteye looked disturbed, like Midoriya had said something that shook him to the core. He looked scared. Tell no one of this. Please, Midoriya, I will explain eventually. But he didn't. Not for years. Even when Nighteye changed after he stopped working with All Might, he never spoke about it nor what happened between him and All Might. But little did Nighteye know that if he had explained what Izuku had seen, Midoriya might have understood what was to come. He might have understood the moment that would change everything. He might have understood why Nighteye was crying. Aldra Junior High. It had been 10 years since that day, when Bakugo had begun to bully his friend for copying his quirk. 10 years since Midoriya had awakened his quirk and looked into the distant future and seen the end of an era, though he did not know it. Izuku Midoriya was sitting in his class at Aldra Junior High. As always, it was the final lesson of the day, and he was sitting in his homeroom surrounded by the people that had pushed him down for years just for having a villain's quirk. But despite that, Izuku Midoriya knew his quirk was that of a hero's. Well, at least one of his quirks was, he did copy the quirk from Sir Nighteye himself, the former sidekick of the legendary All Might, and his mentor. Being trained by Sir the last few years to use their shared quirk had been a dream come true. He had learned how to use their quirk in a combat scenario to predict and dodge opponents' moves and to use simultaneously with his other quirks. You all want to be heroes, don't you? The sudden sound of his classmates cheering shook Izuku out of his current thought track and into the present. His teacher had just been talking to the class about their future after leaving Aldra Junior High. Now I know you're all excited and have amazing quirks, but can we please remember you aren't allowed to use you quirks on school grounds? His teacher was attempting to regain control over the class, but from anyone who looked at the class it was obvious he had lost control. Oh please, don't encourage the extras. The only person whose quirk is worth anything is sitting right here. Midoriya looked forwards, towards the most arrogant voice in the class, possibly the whole world. Katsuki Bakugo, one of the few people in the world with who he shares a quirk, and has been his bully since he first revealed what his quirk was capable of. Ah yes, Bakugo, I do believe you are applying to UA. The teacher looked incredibly pleased as he spoke of Bakugo's future. Is he crazy? Yeah, isn't the acceptance rate for UA only like 2%? Students around the class mumbled to each other over their friend's choice of school. I see Midoriya is also applying for UA. Izuku groaned. His teacher had just done the one thing he didn't want them to do, drawn attention to him. Deku. Of course he knew Bakugo was going to be upset by this, but he didn't expect his application to have been revealed to the whole class. How dare you look down on me? You know I'm the only one who can get into UA. You don't stand a chance, you quirk-stealing villain. Bakugo had slammed his hands down onto Midoriya's desk, using his quirk to burn the edges of Midoriya's desk along with his work. I'm not looking down on you, Bakugo. I just think that I could be a great hero if I went to UA. Also, if you remember my quirk copies, I can't steal quirks, otherwise you wouldn't have your quirk, remember? Midoriya smiled as he said this. As much as he looked up to Bakugo for having the drive to be a hero, he had been repeatedly reminded by Sir that Bakugo wasn't his friend and hadn't been for a long time. Bakugo! Midoriya! Calm down and go back to your seats. Both of them were immediately silent, with Bakugo slowly walking back to his seat, grumbling about how that villain didn't deserve his quirk. Suddenly the bell rang louder than anyone had been in the class. Right class, I will see you in a few days. Remember, all final applications have to be made before the last day of the month. As everyone left the class, Midoriya was packing away when Bakugo slammed his hands into his desk, once again blowing apart Izuku's work from class and scattering whatever hadn't been destroyed. Listen to me, Deku, you will never be a hero with your villainous quirk. All you can ever be is a thief who steals the quirks of real heroes, and I will stop you. At this point, Bakugo had leant so far forward he practically on top of Midoriya. But Bakugo, you've forgotten one thing. What? We share a quirk, remember I copied yours. Fear flashed across Bakugo's face as he realized what was about to happen. A sudden flash immediately followed by a loud bang could be seen by the remaining few people in the room. Bakugo thrown across the room, landing painfully on his teacher's desk, scattering paper everywhere. Izuku stood up, collected the last of his things and walked towards the door, but before he left, he turned around, looked Bakugo in the eye and spoke. I don't look down you, Bakugo, but you need to realize you're not the only person capable of being a hero, and if all you care about is being the best, the strongest, then even if you make it to the top, people will never call you a true hero. And with that, Midoriya walked out of the class and towards the place where his destiny would continue to grow, and the vision he saw all those years ago would finally become clearer, if only by the smallest amount. 8 minutes later. Walking under a large bridge, Midoriya finally released the breath he had held for so long. He had done it. He had finally done it. He had stood up to Bakugo. If he could do this, what else could he do? If he could conquer this fear, what else could he do? But while pondering the question, a slimy tentacle wrapped around his leg, and when Midoriya noticed it, it was too late. The rest of a sludge villain emerged from a nearby sewer grate. Thanks, kid, just what I was looking for, the perfect camouflage suit for me to escape. Midoriya looked around, panicked, but there was no one to save him, no hero jumping out from the shadows, no grand rescue attempt to save him. He was alone, attacked by a man whose quirk would allow him to use Midoriya's body to escape his hunter. Midoriya knew if he was to live, if he was to escape, he had to use. But first he used foresight on the villain. Looking into his eyes, he saw the villain's attacks before they happened. Second, he used explosion to blow apart the tentacle wrapped around his leg, forcing himself backwards as he made for the tunnel's exit. He saw what would happen. The villain would just block the exit and he would be trapped once again. Releasing explosions from his hands to throw his body of the way, dodging tentacle after tentacle, escaping from the grip of the villain time and time again, and soon it would be over. How are you doing this? It's like you know where my attacks are coming from. I do. But that moment of speech, that response distracted Midoriya, and then the sludge villain took the advantage. He wrapped around him in an instant, holding Midoriya in place from all sides. You put up a good fight, kid, but I'm better. The sludge villain laughed in triumph. He's right, I can't beat him. Using foresight, Midoriya saw what the villain would do next. It would force its way down his throat and go on a rampage, using Midoriya's quirks to bring terror to the city. No, I can't lose, I won't. Using his fourth quirk that he had, Midoriya let go, releasing a near uncontrollable amount of power, a wave of heat that blasted the villain all over the walls, knocking it unconscious. As Midoriya stood alone under that bridge, he looked at the marks on the walls left behind by his fourth quirk and his red palms that looked like they had experienced a severe sunburn. I'm sorry, he spoke quietly to himself, shaking. I promised you I wouldn't use our quirk until I became a hero, a real hero. Your time is over, villain. Do you know why? Because I am here. The sudden sound of the #1 hero in Japan bursting out of the sewers threw Midoriya for a loop. Here he was, Sir's mentor, the man who had saved him and his mum when the train cart had been overturned all those years ago. All Might turned his head, looking all over the place. Scorch marks covered the walls. All Might. The hero turned and faced the young boy. His palms were red like they had been burned by the sun. Who was this boy? From the state of the tunnel walls and the villain, it was like he had just released the full power of his quirk and his body couldn't handle it, like it wasn't his own. No, he couldn't think like that. All for one was gone. Besides, this kid probably just used his quirk and released too much power. It's not like that hasn't happened before. Dozens of people struggle to control their quirk if they don't actively use and train it like heroes. Are you okay, young? Midoriya, sir. Izuku Midoriya, future student of UA and #1 hero. Izuku jumped at the chance to tell the number one hero his name and his dreams. He couldn't believe it. All Might had arrived to save him. Sure, he was a little late, but so what? The number one hero in Japan had come to save him. Ha ha ha, the future number one hero. Well, young Midoriya, I look forward to seeing you there. Good luck and thank you for handling the villain for me. And with that, the number one hero collected the sludge that made the villain into 2 large drinks bottles at a speed too fast for Midoriya to see. Running towards the end of the tunnel, he turned back for just a second and spoke to Izuku. Good luck, young Midoriya, and remember, if you want to be a hero, go beyond plus ultra. A wave of wind flooded the tunnel, pushing Midoriya back a few feet as the number one hero leapt into the sky. Suddenly Midoriya looked over to his bag and saw his notebook, and then he realized, I forgot to get his autograph. Leaping over the tall buildings that made up the city, All Might thought to himself why that name was so familiar. Izuku Midoriya, where have heard that name before? Suddenly the number one hero began to steam. It was coming off of him from all angles. He could barely breathe. Demon, looks like my time's up. All Might landed on a nearby building attempting to maintain his hero form, but having struggled for about 2 minutes he finally relented and allowed his real form to overtake him. Looking like a skeleton, his outfit barely hanging off of him, the number one hero coughed an almost dangerous amount. I barely made it. All Might, or rather Toshinori Yagi in this form, could see the police station barely a block away. Right then, time to take you to the police. Reaching for the bottles in his pocket, the number one hero grasped at an empty space. Looking down in shock, the number one hero suddenly heard a series of explosions. He desperately hoped as he moved towards them that it was not the sludge villain. If it wasn't, he had failed in getting him back to the station, but at least his failure wouldn't be the reason for the explosions that he had heard 2 minutes earlier. As Izuku gathered his things, he realized the hour wasn't up. Hoping that the villain was imprisoned, he looked into the villain's future using foresight. He saw a street only a few blocks over, the villain escaping the bottles, Bakugo being strangled, heroes watching helpless, willing to let a kid die because they didn't have the right quirks for the job. No, I won't let him die. Despite the way Bakugo had treated him over the years, Midoriya would never be able to forgive himself if he let his old friend die. Running towards the street, Midoriya pulled out his phone and called the only person in his contacts who would be able to save Katsuki Bakugo. Sir Nighteye. Midoriya, where you were supposed to start training in 5 minutes? I know, sir, but in a few minutes there is going to be a villain attack 3 blocks south from our training center involving a hostage with a dangerous quirk and heroes who won't be able to save him. I understand, Midoriya, I will be there as soon as possible. Go straight home. If you can't avoid the fight, watch but don't interfere. Remember, you don't have permission to use your quirk in public. Midoriya turned the corner and in front of him was a large crowd with smoke streaming out over their heads. I understand, sir, I have just arrived at the fight now. I promise I will only watch, but sir, the hostage, it's Bakugo. I understand, I'm nearly there. With that, Midoriya heard the sound of his phone beep. He could only hope sir would arrive in time. In front of him, the hero backdraft attempting to put out the fires that were destroying the buildings on either side of the street. It was as he had seen. The sludge villain had latched onto Bakugo and was using his quirk to wreak havoc on the surrounding street. Death Arms and Kamui Woods stood there just watching the scene while the new hero, Lady, who had made her debut earlier that day, stood over 60 foot tall, stuck by the tall buildings, unable to enter the street. In the back, Toshinori Yagi had arrived, but he was weak. He had already used up all his time, and now the feeling dread had entered his body. The one thing he didn't want to happen had. The sludge villain had taken another host, and it was all his fault. Hey, why aren't the heroes doing anything? Yeah. He's just a kid. Save him, please. The crowd was begging the heroes to do something, but what could they do? They were facing a villain who was immune to their physical attacks. We can't do anything. If we try to get in close, that villain will use the kid's quirk to blow us up before we can even get close. Izuku Midoriya edged forward through the crowd. It was just as he had predicted. The heroes would stand there helpless while Bakugo would be swallowed whole by the villain. He looked around. Sir still wasn't here. Where was he? He was the only one who could save Bakugo, the only one who knew how to defy foresight's prediction. But then he could see him, a skeletal figure, a man whose clothes seemed to be hanging off of him like the hero in his vision. Who was he? It didn't matter because Midoriya realized that the villain had covered the entirety of Bakugo's head. He couldn't breathe. Sir still wasn't here. He couldn't afford to waste any more time. He dropped his bag and pushed past the line of police officers and ran past the heroes. "Hey kids, stop, it isn't safe for you." The pro-hero Death Arms tried to grab him, but Midoriya kept running, ducking just beneath the hero's grip. Midoriya focused his quirk and pulled. With his mom's quirk, he could attract up to 4 objects at once now. As long each object wasn't too large, he focused on Bakugo's belt, his tie, his shoes, and surely Bakugo was pulled just far enough out of the sludge that he could breathe. "Bakugo!" Midoriya yelled his name as he kept running towards him. Bakugo couldn't understand. Why was Deku trying to save him after all he has done? Izuku focused on his shared quirks, using foresight to dodge each attack, holding up the power of attraction to keep Bakugo out of the sludge. "Hey, I remember you." The villain was distracted by the presence of its previous target, allowing Izuku to get in close. Finally, after grabbing hold of Bakugo's arm, he used explosion to launch himself and Bakugo 15 feet from the villain. All Might looked at the sight, amazed. Here was the kid that he had saved earlier, who had been hurt by his own quirk, was willing to stand up and fight even if he didn't have the training or license to use his quirk in public. As the villain prepared to attack them, to grab hold of them and use them to wreak more havoc once more, All Might started to steam. He would only get one shot at this one punch. He turned his head, and just as he was about to transform, a familiar figure rushed past, pushing through the crowd and pro-heroes, jumping over fallen bins and obstacles with near superhuman speed, and All Might knew things were going to be okay. He jumped in the air, throwing a series of seals at the villain, impacting both eyes, knocking the villain off course. Midoriya looked over his shoulder at the hero that had saved him. He knew it. He knew Sir wouldn't let him down. Standing tall in his signature gray and yellow suit, the former sidekick rushed the 2 boys to safety, and with Backdraft no longer needing to put out fires, he could finally get involved. "Backdraft, focus your attacks on the center of its mass. If we dilute the villain, he won't be able to control his body." "Right, sir." With Backdraft and Sir Nighteye fighting the villain, the fight was over within a matter of minutes. As Midoriya gazed in wonder at Sir Nighteye's victory, the sudden sound of Death Arms yelling at him shook Midoriya out of his stupor. "What were you thinking, kid? You could have gotten seriously hurt." "I know, sir, but I couldn't just let Bakugo die while you and the other heroes were just standing around." The look of shock on many of the members of the crowd's faces showed that they realized just how serious the situation had been. If the teen hadn't stepped in, Bakugo, or whatever the hostage's name was, would be dead. "Right, you are Midoriya. If you could go and wait for me, I will be along momentarily." "What do you mean wait for you? Are you to this kid Nighteye?" Death Arms stood waiting for a reply. "He is my successor." The realization that Sir Nighteye, a hero in his prime, was training a successor shocked the crowd. Who was this kid? What could his quirk do besides cause explosions that Nighteye was training him? As everyone gathered around Nighteye asking questions, Midoriya was able to sneak away without anyone noticing. As the crowd slowly started to calm down, a tall, bony figure walked away. "Izuku Midoriya, that's where I recognize your name from, the boy who copied Mirai's quirk." As All Might walked away, he remembered where he had heard Midoriya's name before. It had been just after the fight on the train tracks, and Nighteye had donated blood to save a young boy's life. "Good luck, young Midoriya. I hope to see you at UA in the new year." Not even a block away, our young protagonist was explaining to his mentor why he shouldn't be punished on the short walk back to the Midoriya family home. "I know I shouldn't have used my quirk, sir, but see, I didn't have a choice." "Midoriya, we all have a choice, okay? You can't just rush in, especially now when you're so close to joining UA." "I know, sir. Not only that, but now I have to tell your mother what happened before she sees it on the news." "No, please, sir, I will do anything. I will even tell you a funny joke." "Midoriya, in all the years I have known you, you have never told me a funny joke. Not even the one about the... especially that one." And so it continued on that journey. Midoriya begged Sir not tell his mother, but Sir would tell her anyway, and after Midoriya had finished his 2-week-long grounding, the training with Nighteye would start up again in preparation for the entrance exam to UA. It would be a while before Midoriya finally told Nighteye that he had changed the future. 10 months later, he had finally done it. 10 years of progressive training followed by 10 months of the most intensive training he had ever experienced, but he had finally done it. He could use 3 of his quirks in perfect conjunction with each other. He was finally here in front of the gates to UA where he would hopefully go for the next 3 years. Move out of the way, Deku. Of course he was here, the one person he knew would be here that he just didn't want to see. Hey Bakugo, how you doing, looking forward to the test? Izuku spoke through gritted teeth. He didn't really care how Bakugo was, but he knew that if he showed interest in him, Bakugo would leave as quickly as possible or attempt to beat him up, but Midoriya knew Bakugo wouldn't try it, especially not here, in front of the best hero school in the country. Just stay out of my way, Deku, if you know what's good for you. And with that, Bakugo walked through the main gates and towards the central building. This is it, this is what you've worked for your entire life. Come on Midoriya, let's do this. Hyping himself up as he walked through the gates to UA with a determined look on his face, but as always luck was not on his side. No sooner had Midoriya walked through the gates and towards the central building did he trip on a crack in the pavement. Falling forward too fast to react, Midoriya didn't have a chance to think before his shoulder was grabbed, preventing him from falling. Whoa there, you okay? Looking around him, Midoriya saw 2 people behind him, the first being a blonde-haired boy who had been the one to grab and speak to him, the second a girl with dark hair. Yeah, I'm fine. Good, wouldn't want you to fall before I get a better score than you in the entrance exam. Monoma, don't say that you have no idea what his quirk is, it could be better than yours, the dark-haired girl said quietly. Well, why don't we see, huh? Said Monoma. Wait, what? Midoriya was shocked. They were arguing over his quirk and now they wanted him to use it. He just wanted to do the entrance exam. Okay, then let's see. Raising his hand, Monoma focused and released a small explosion from the palm of his hand. Another normal quirk? What? Midoriya was amazed to see that someone had copied his shared quirk. Monoma can copy the quirks of anyone he touches. The girl with dark hair smiled as she explained her best friend's quirk. No way, wait, I want to try something. Rifling through his pockets, Midoriya pulled out a small black marble. Try and pull the marble towards you. What, why? Please just try, he begged. Okay, why not, it won't do anything. Focusing on the marble, Monoma was amazed as it slowly moved towards his outstretched hand, dropping it when it was halfway between them. It's chow. We both have copy quirks, but mine's a bit more permanent. The look on Midoriya's face after his reveal was a smile wide enough that it couldn't be ignored, and the look on Monoma's face was shock. Shock that turned to joy with the realization he had finally met someone like him, someone who understood. No, what, sire? Trigger, how long can you hold quirks for? Can you multiply quirks simultaneously? Calm down, Monoma. I'm sorry, it's just that he has never met anyone like him before, she said shyly. No, of course, don't worry about. I love to talk about my quirk. I'm Midoriya Izuku. Kodai Yui. My quirk is called size. I can change size of any non-living object that I touch. The copycat next to me is Monoma Nito. She spoke while blushing face towards the ground. Nice to meet you, come on, we can talk as we walk to the exam hall. Walking towards the exam hall, Izuku had a good feeling about his new friends. If only he had known what was to happen that day. As they reached the examination hall, Midoriya promised to explain the full details of his quirk after the practical exam was finished. I will hold you to that. Midoriya, I want to know how you are able to adapt to multiple quirks. Sure, Monoma. I will talk to you after the practical. I would love to learn about your quirk as well. Yeah, we get it, you both have similar quirks. Now can we please go in? The sooner we go in, the sooner I get to see your faces when I destroy your scores in the practical. Like that's ever going to happen. Guys, can we please not fight? Midoriya was trying to calm his new friends down from the ever-growing argument. Can all students take their assigned seats? The test is about to start. Midoriya couldn't believe it. The invigilator was the one and only ectoplasm, or at least one of his copies. I will see you guys later. Running to take his assigned seat, Midoriya realized something. On what was supposed to be one of the most stressful days in his life, for the first time in years, he had met some new friends. And talked to Aja. The exam was not as hard as Midoriya was expecting, the first half of the paper being a combination of English, Japanese, mathematics, and science. It was hard to remember. UA wasn't just a hero school, it was the most prestigious school in the country and trained not just future heroes but other valuable members of society. The second half of the exam was the half Midoriya excelled in quirk analysis, villain analysis, rescue analysis, quirk history, and quirk law. Midoriya finished the exam that day in record time, being given the highest recorded score of 99.5% or 199 of 200, which was not only the highest recorded mark of all time but was finished in the fastest time ever recorded, finishing in just under 45 minutes of the 2 hours the applicants were given to complete the test. Walking down the row of seats, people were turning to face him while murmuring about him. Ignoring the lot of them, Midoriya walked past the final seats and turned his exam into ectoplasm with a solemn look on his face. Very well, please exit the examination area. Walking out of the room, Izuku finally released the breath he had held the entire time he was turning in his exam. He had done it, one exam done, one more to do. Sitting in the large auditorium with the other applicants waiting for a teacher to explain the details of the practical exam, Izuku Midoriya could feel his nerves growing larger by the second, just waiting for whichever pro hero would appear next to tell them what their test would be. Can I get a hey? The sound of present mic voice echoed through the auditorium. It was followed by a level of silence and awkwardness that no one in that room had ever experienced before. Wow, tough crowd. Okay, first off, welcome to UA and congratulations on making it this far. Little listeners, now listen up, cause I'm only going to explain this once. Doing the exact opposite, Midoriya looked down at the pamphlet he had been given when he had entered the auditorium just a few minutes ago. He would be facing off against 4 robots, each with a different point total. It must be a competition to see who can get the most points by destroying the robots. I could charge through it with explosion, but I could also... Mumbling onward for another good 3 minutes, Midoriya missed the brother of Ingenium stand up and question present mic. And you with the green hair, stop mumbling, you're distracting other examinees. If you aren't serious about being a hero, you should leave right now. The verbal assault shocked Midoriya out of his mumbling. He looked down sheepishly at the ground. He was serious about being a hero, but his mumbling was just the way he processed information. Yo, examinee 7111, do not shame people for their habits. Also, the last robot is the 0-pointer. It is worth nothing, but it is more of an obstacle than anything else, like a thwomp from one of those pre-quirk games, right? Then everybody do your best and go beyond. Plus ultra. Everyone had joined in with the hero to shout the phrase that defined any hero that graduated from UA. On the bus to the examination grounds, Izuku Midoriya was looking down at his hands and thinking hard. If he wanted to pass, would he have to use the power of his 4th quirk, and if so, could he control it enough not to hurt the other students? Stepping out of the bus, Midoriya looked up at the gate that stood between him and his greatest test yet. It was tall chrome steel and more imposing than Bakugo and the rest of Midoriya's bullies could have ever been. Beside Midoriya, many students were stretching, getting ready to enter the testing ground and prove their worth to the heroes watching the exam. Looking ahead of him, Midoriya saw Kodai from earlier. Maybe I should go say hi. Walking towards her, Midoriya felt the sudden jolt of a hand landing on his shoulder. Excuse me, but I believe she is trying to concentrate, and as an esteemed member of Somei Junior High, I cannot allow you to distract her. But we know each. Furthermore, I noticed you were intent on distracting your fellow examinees in the hall. But I didn't mean. So from all this information I have figured out exactly what you are. You are a distraction sent here by the teachers to test how focused we can remain under a high-pressure situation. Looking dumbfounded, Midoriya couldn't believe it. This guy thought he was sent here by the teachers, and now not only that, but people were looking at him. The other examinees were focused completely on him, now muttering between themselves about how weak he looks and how it was less competition to face. And go! Go! That one word rushed through Midoriya's body and mind. Rushing through the barely open gates, Midoriya fired off multiple explosions behind him to launch himself forward. Before anyone else had left the gate, Midoriya had destroyed 2 1-pointers, 1 3-pointer and 2 2-pointers. Using explosion to propel himself high over the buildings, Midoriya could see the other examinees rushing through the fake city that was the testing ground to claim points. Propelling himself forward through the center of the city, Midoriya landed at the central plaza surrounded by more robots than could be counted. Let's do this. Using a combination of explosion and attraction, Midoriya pulled pieces off of the robots before destroying them, making the ones closest to him less dangerous before their destruction. Sitting in a dark room with dozens of screens, the teachers of UA watched their future students carry out the exam using their many quirks and many different styles of fighting. Quirks often define our society, but how we apply them will show us which individuals have the power and mindset to be heroes, whether it be by pure brute force. The screen in front of displayed an image of Bakugo standing in the midst of the wreckage of many robots. Through innovation, a screen flickered to show the face of Kodai pulling stones off the ground and enlarging them to crush the robots. And even misdirection. The screen flashed to a boy with blue luring a robot into an alleyway before using the walls to jump on top of it. Nizu look at screen 15C. Looking over at the screen, the principal could see Izuku Midoriya using 2 of his quirks in perfect sync. Does that kid have multiple quirks? Yeah, no way. Isn't that the same quirk as that kid with the blonde hair? All Might looked scared for a moment. How could someone have multiple quirks before he realized that it was Nighteye's quirk copying apprentice? Pulling up his file, Principal Nizu was fascinated with the information. Izuku Midoriya, quirk, blood factor. He can copy the quirk of any individual whose blood enters his system permanently. Current recorded quirks, foresight, attraction of small objects and explosion. Attends the King support group for blood-related quirks on Wednesdays and is often picked up from school by Sir Nighteye or one of his sidekicks. Wait, the kid goes to your support group, Vlad? Yeah, I know the kid, gets on well with many of the others and often helps them with their quirks, but he still refuses to copy their quirks despite them being offered, something to do with when he first revealed his quirk to friends I'm really not at liberty to say. 5 years ago. Okay everyone, today we have a new member, would you please give him a warm welcome? Vlad King sat in his chair facing inwards towards the rest of the circle. Do you want to introduce yourself and your quirk? Okay, hi everyone, I'm Izuku Midoriya, my quirk is called Blood Factor, I can copy quirks from blood permanently. Hi Midoriya, a chorus of voice echoed around the room. Thank you Midoriya. Now then, today we are going to discuss how we can use our quirks in a home environment comfortably. 30 minutes later. Okay everyone, thanks for coming and I will see you next week. Everyone slowly stood up out of their chairs, walking towards the table by the side of the room. Midoriya, I want you to know if you need any help with your quirk, just come and ask me, the pro hero said. Izuku nodded and turned towards the table to see a smiling girl with blonde hair and sharp teeth standing in front of him. Hi, nice to meet Midoriya. Nice to meet you too, Himiko Toga. Now, I wonder how much he has improved since that day. Vlad spoke quietly. With a creepy smile on his face, Principal Nizu turned to face Vlad King. Let's find out, shall we? Pushing the big red button on his desk, the rest of the staff knew that the real test of who their future pupils were was about to begin. The testing ground. The sudden shuddering of the ground was the first sign. The second was the giant robot that was rising out of the ground, and as Midoriya saw it, he realized just how insane this school truly was. Letting loose a series of explosions, Izuku fled from the robot, going as fast as possible. The very shaking of the arena had caused buildings to topple. Rubble was flying all over the place, breaking the last of the smaller robots and scaring away the few examinees who had yet to see the robot. Help! The sound barely reached his ears. Midoriya turned mid-flight to see a building had collapsed and had pinned a dark-haired girl to the ground. Rushing towards her, Midoriya recognized her. She was the girl he had met earlier, Kodai Yui. The rubble had trapped her hands, blood leaking onto the ground from her various cuts and bruises. Rushing to her side, Midoriya knew that he didn't have enough time to save her with the quirks he had on hand. The zero-pointer edged closer. Step by step, the ground shook with the ever-growing shadow of despair. Izuku thought hard and fast he would have to use it. His quirk, not one of his shared quirks, his original quirk. What's your quirk? Quick, remind me, I need to know. It's called size. If I touch my fingers together after touching an object, I can grow or shrink or grow that object. Okay, it's going to be okay. Running his hand over Kodai's arm, Midoriya picked up as much of her blood as possible in his palms and he drank. Lifting his fingers up to his mouth, Midoriya could feel his teeth slide into place and the power that he had now gained. Running towards the zero-pointer, Midoriya could hear the voices of the people behind him. Is he insane? Yeah, no one can take that thing on. Using explosion to leap high into the air, Midoriya focused on his fourth quirk. Keeping its power low, the marble in his hand began to grow hot. So hot he could barely hold it. He threw it forward, and as soon as he let go of it, he touched his hands together. grow, and so it did, so large that it was larger than Midoriya. He fired up explosion, launching himself backwards and the giant marble forward till it reached the giant robot and melted through its head like a hot knife through butter. Teacher's command center. Did he just? Power loader don't. Teach how. That robot was my best creation yet, and it was as expensive as Aizawa's salary. What? That much? The other teachers were going crazy. How could a robot that cost so much have been destroyed so easily? Principal Nizu, why are they commenting on Aizawa's salary? All Might, being new to the job, was unfamiliar with Aizawa's salary. All Might, this is his salary. Principal Nizu passed a small note across the desks to the current number 1 hero. WHT. The sound of the number 1 hero's voice echoed through the halls of UA as his body exploded in size. Why are there so many zeros? Back at the testing grounds, Izuku Midoriya crashed into the ground. Looking up at the wreckage of the zero-pointer, Midoriya was amazed. Did he really have this much power? Behind him, the many student examinees looked on in shock and wonder. Was this the power of the boy who couldn't stop mumbling? Was this power of someone they thought was weak? Lita Tenya looked at the girl the green-haired boy had saved. Of course, if this wasn't an exam I would have saved. Wait, why did he save her? Maybe he knew, no, but maybe. His thoughts trailed off into the distance, unsure of why the boy had done such a thing. And the exam is over. Thanks for all your entries. We will let you know soon whether or not you have passed. Now head on over to the lockers and go home, and we hope to see as many of you as possible in the new term. Midoriya turned to face Kodai running over to get her out of the cement. Midoriya was stopped by an old lady dressed in an old-fashioned lab coat. Please stop, Sonny. Sir Mentos will help get her out. The broken-down rubble slowly became a liquid, receding backwards until the building was standing tall once again. Come on, miss, let's get you checked out at the nurse's station. Okay, thanks, recovery girl. Turning towards Midoriya, Kodai couldn't help but feel grateful towards her savior. By Midoriya, I will see you in the new year, right? Sure, I look forward to it. 2 weeks later. Izuku Midoriya, as the individual who has scored the most points in both the written and practical examinations, it is my honor to welcome you to you. Good job, young man, this is your hero academia. Izuku Midoriya, as the individual who has scored the most points in both the written and practical examinations, it is my honor to welcome you to you. Good job, young man, this is your hero academia. 1 month later. Looking up at the gates of UA once again, Midoriya knew at once that this was where he belonged. Crossing through the gates, Midoriya walked down the entranceway towards the main building, with fellow students walking alongside him. For the first time in a long time, Midoriya didn't feel quite so alone. Walking through the wide open corridors, Midoriya was amazed at how large everything was. It's probably for people with mutation or gigantification quirks. Muttering as he walked along, Midoriya finally arrived at the door to Class 1A. Take your feet off the table at once. You are dishonoring the upperclassmen that sat there before you. Oh no, Midoriya thought. You think you can tell me what to do, you useless extra? Why, oh, why does it have to be them? Midoriya recognized the voices immediately. Looking through the open door, Midoriya's worst fears were confirmed. Sitting at one of the desks next to the window was Bakugo, and attempting to get him to take his feet off of the desk was the boy that had a go at him for muttering during present mixed speech. An extra. How dare you? I am Lita Tenya from Semi-Private Academy of Dash. Yeah, whatever. All I can hear is you're a stuck-up useless extra who is nothing compared to me. The sound of the two arguing reverberated throughout the whole classroom. Letting out a long-held sigh, Midoriya stepped through the classroom door and awaited the chaos that was to follow. The blue-haired boy noticed and stepped towards him. Greetings, I am Lita Tenya from Semi-Academy of... I know who you are. I overheard you talking to Bakugo. I'm Izuku Midoriya. Midoriya, no wait, you can't be the number 1 scorer from the entrance exam. Lita Tenya seemed to panic for a minute. Yep, that's me, waving slightly with an open smile. Midoriya, please accept my utmost apologies. I shouldn't have judged you so harshly during the exam. You truly understood the purpose of the exam beyond fighting the robots. You are most definitely worthy of being in this school. With a hand rubbing the back of his own head in embarrassment, if you mean the rescue points, I had no idea. I just saw someone who needed saving and helped them out. The blue-haired boy looked at him with shock. Midoriya, you are becoming more of an inspiration by the second." Before he could respond, the sound of the bell echoed through the classroom and everyone rushed to the desk with their name on it. A low level of chatter permeated the classroom, people getting to know each other and their quirks, but the biggest topic of conversation was who their homeroom teacher would be. The door slid open and a man dressed in black with a long gray scarf stepped through. The chatter died down almost instantly. 8 seconds to stop talking, mediocre at best. Lifting 2 baskets up from behind his desk, the man begun to leave. "Get these tracksuits on and meet me outside by the track as quickly as you can." The entire class rushed to grab a tracksuit in their size and headed to the changing room to get changed. After 8 minutes, the entire class had reached the track to see their teacher standing there with a bag of ball beside him and a device in hand. 8 minutes, disappointing. By the end of this year you will have that time understood. "Yes, sensei," the entire class responded. "Good, we will be doing a series of exercises that will act as this year's opening physical assessment. As all of you will know, you are not permitted to use your quirks for these assessments in your previous schools. This is due to the Department of Education believing that everyone is equal and should be treated as such. This is a lie." Many members of the class froze with disbelief. "As such, to gain the best results you can achieve, you will all be permitted to use your quirks during this exam, Midoriya?" "Yes, sensei." Izuku stepped forward. "You got the best score on the practical exam. Please use your quirk to throw the ball as far as possible. I don't care what you do, but don't leave the circle behind me." Stepping into the circle, Midoriya caught the ball his teacher threw to him and thought of all the ways he could use his quirk to amplify his throw. "If I focus on the ball and use explosion, I might get some distance, but would that be enough? No, I need to use everything. I have to prove myself. I'm going to have to use fourth to get the edge." "We are waiting, Midoriya." Lifting his arm above his head, Midoriya focused and threw the ball, and in an instant he released it. He activated 2 quirks simultaneously, explosion and fourth, releasing a massive explosion far bigger than any Bakugo had ever achieved. The massive explosion was so hot that it had been unleashed in a myriad of colors, but the most dominant of them was blue. A bright blue permeated the explosion and mesmerized the audience. Bakugo stood there in shock and disbelief, stammering, My quirk, what did you do to my quirk, you filthy bill?" Leaping towards Midoriya with his arms outstretched, Bakugo's outrage was cut short by the gray scarf of their teacher wrapping around his head and the glow of red eyes which activated at the exact same time Bakugo's quirk shut off. "Please calm down or else I will expel you. I would like to use my quirk as little as possible as it gives me dry eye." Releasing Bakugo revealed to Midoriya exactly who their teacher was. "You're Eraserhead," he said quietly. "Correct, Midoriya, but you and the rest of the class will call me Aizawa-sensei. Is that understood? Good. Now, then shall we take a look at Midoriya's score?" Turning the electronic measuring device to face the class, they were amazed by Midoriya's score. 1.4 kilometers, incredible. No way, who is this kid? This is going to be so fun. As soon as Midoriya heard those words, he knew that these tests weren't going to be fun in the slightest. Fun? Being a hero is not fun. We have 3 years to make you the best heroes you can be. You will not have time for fun, understood? And as such, for that little comment, the person who scores last on this exam will be judged as having no potential and will be expelled. Oh no. Midoriya remembered he had heard about him and had really wanted to avoid having Aizawa as his teacher. 1 year ago. "Hi, my name is Hayes." "Hi, Hayes," the circle responded in turn. "My quirk is called Blood Whip, and today was my first day at UA and I was expelled." "What? No way. Why?" "Everyone please calm down, it's Hayes' turn to talk." Vlad King attempted to regain control of the session from the group. "My homeroom teacher decided that none of the class had any potential, so he expelled all of us." "No way. Vlad, can't you help Hayes stay at UA?" The leader of their group just looked at them. "I'm afraid I can't. Once you've been expelled, it can't be reversed unless the teacher who expelled the person chooses to do so. I'm sorry, Hayes, I can recommend you to Shiketsu, but that's the best I can do." "Thank you, Vlad King." "Okay, now then, does anyone else want to say anything?" Present. Right class, over to the 50-meter sprints. The sound of the most difficult and trigger-happy teacher shook Midoriya from his flashback as he began to race after the class. Sprints. Watching the rest of his classmates speed through the trial, Midoriya thought of the quirks he could combine to get the fastest possible time. Only fourth, an explosion can enhance my speed. If I repeat what I did during the ball throw, then I can go faster than Bakugo and hopefully anyone else. 2.05 seconds, the sound of the machine threw him for a loop. That fast who, turning to face the end of the track, Lita Tenya stood there with a smile on his face, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose and the engines in his legs emitting a small amount of steam. Huh, so that's his quirk. I wonder if he's related to Ingenium. Midoriya, Bakugo, you're up. The sound of Eraserhead barking at them reminded Midoriya that this test could decide if he stayed at UA or if he let Sir and everyone that believed in him down. Walking up to the start line, Midoriya could see Bakugo standing there ready to go. Turning away from his old friend, Midoriya faced the track, his arms pointed behind him with his fingers splayed wide open. Bakugo turned to face him. Don't you dare. Go! Launching himself forward with explosion and forth, a series of bright blue and orange explosions propelled him forward faster than Bakugo. 2.04 seconds. 4.08 seconds. Midoriya skidded to a stop. A smile bloomed on his face. His confidence was slowly starting to come back. 20 minutes later. DIE. The sound of Bakugo screaming out his favorite word while using his quirk almost deafened the entire class with the ringing in their ears. The class stood there amazed at the power their classmate had displayed. 705 meters. Humph, Bakugo didn't seem impressed with the distance he had achieved. Good, now then your results. Izuku Midoriya, Momo Yaoyorozu, Shoto Todoroki, Katsuki Bakugo, Tenya Ilda, Fumikage Tokoyami, Mizo Shoto, Mashireo Ojiro, Ijiro Kirishima, Mina Ishido, Achiko Uraraka, Koji Koda, Rikido Sato, Sia Ajui, Yugo Aoyama, Antasiro, Denki Kaminari, Kyokujiro, Toru Hagakure, Minoru Mineta. Mineta, grab your things, you're expelled. Aizawa said calmly. The small boy with ball on his head looked at their teacher with shock. What? But I thought that you were just lying to make us do our best. The number 2 scorer Momo Yaoyorozu looked at him with both shock and fear. He doesn't lie about this. Everyone turned to face Midoriya, who spoke in a quiet, dark voice. Last year he expelled his entire class because they had no potential. Everyone gulped. They all paled. Even Bakugo, who knew he was the best, was scared this man could ruin his hero career in an instant. Thank you, Midoriya, for ruining my fun, but yes, I will not hesitate to expel this entire class if I believe it necessary. Understood? Yes, sensei. The entire class responded. Good, now get changed and grab your class schedules from my desk. The end of the day. Walking out of the gates of UA, Midoriya looked down at the watch on his wrist. I can make it, was all he said. Walking along the side of the road, Midoriya reached one of the few places he truly felt comfortable, entering the plain building across from the train station he would take each day for the next 3 years to get to UA. Walking down the corridor, Midoriya could feel his heart beating in his chest faster and faster. He stopped. In front of him was a door. He opened it. Zuu. The blonde maniac Himiko Toga dived towards him with her arms outstretched to catch him a large hug, though knowing her, Midoriya imagined it was just another attempt to get his blood. He sidestepped out of the way, letting Himiko slam face first into the floor anime style. I'm sorry about her, she has been itching to see you after you missed last week. Good to see you, Midoriya. Nah, no problem, Kaizome, it's good to see you again too. Midoriya looked up at the tall, pale, nose-less man with a look of respect. Crash. I'm really sorry, Midoriya, but until Vlad King gets here it appears I'm the only one who can stop everyone from tearing this place apart. Yes, sure, go ahead. Midoriya looked around the room, seeing so many people that were just like him, pushed down for just being born with a quirk that was evil and wrong by society's standards. But looking at them now, Midoriya knew that they were just people that didn't deserve what they had been through. Sorry I'm late, everybody. One of the new members of my class decided to make a speech about, well, never mind, it doesn't matter. Is everyone ready to begin? The bloody hero Vlad King walked into the room, ready to help the people that resembled him so greatly. Everyone in the room sat down in the ring of seats in the center of the room. Now then, I was wondering if we could start with you today, Midoriya, and how you're doing at the moment. Of course, I'm doing pretty well at the moment. I just finished my first day at UA and I have started to use the fourth more. Vlad King looked at Midoriya with pride. That's very good, Midoriya. I'm proud that you have started to use that quirk more, and as everyone here remembers, the first step to accepting your quirk is using it in even the smallest ways. Midoriya looked round the circle at the people clapping at him for using that quirk. The quirk he remembered getting so vividly. 10 years ago. Midoriya was sitting down crying in the playground. Bakugo had been picking on him for copying his quirk again. Hey kid, why are you crying? Looking up, Midoriya saw a taller boy with white hair standing next to him. Tears streaming down his face, Midoriya was surprised that someone actually cared that he was crying other than his mother and Nighteye. My free friend wants to be a hero, so he trains by using his quirk on me. The look on the boy's face was anger and in his eyes sympathy. But why you? Why does he use you? He says I'm a villain because I have a bad quirk, he said, sniffling. The look on the older boy's face wasn't just anger, it was rage, unfiltered rage, so much so his fists and hair started to glow blue, and then they were covered with red and blue flames so hot he could feel them from a distance. After a moment the boy calmed down and sat down next to him. Listen to me, you do not have a bad quirk, okay? No quirk is bad. How do you know that? Because that's what my father says about me and 2 of my siblings, that we have useless broken quirks. Midoriya looked at him in awe. Did this boy know what he was going through? What can your quirk do? I can copy quirks forever by drinking someone's blood. That is not a bad quirk. With that quirk you can become anything you want to be, in fact copy mine, he said confidently. Copy my quirk and become the hero you want to be, a hero even greater than my father could ever hope to become. Midoriya nodded as the older boy pulled a pocket knife out of his pocket and cut his finger. Is this enough? Midoriya could only nod. Wiping the blood onto the knife, the older boy passed it to Midoriya. Midoriya liked the blade and felt the heat rush through his body and fangs slide into place. The older boy took back his knife and started to walk away. Wait, what your name? It's Tuya Todoroki. 3 nights later, Midoriya watched the news over his mother's shoulder and saw a photo of the boy on the screen, his father standing in front of a crowd telling the world how his eldest son had died in a training accident after overusing his quirk. I promise that I will use your quirk only to become the hero you believed I could be. Midoriya whispered. No. Come on Izuku, just 1 drop, you know you want to, the crazed blonde said as she latched onto Izuku's right arm. No Himiko, I'm not drinking your blood and you aren't drinking mine, we don't know what will happen. Phi-Thean. Okay, now can you please let go of my arm, I need to get off. Slowly Himiko let go of his arm and allowed him to get off the train. Bye, see you next week, she shouted at him as Midoriya left the station and started the short walk back to his house. Across the street a man dressed in a black leather outfit with black hair watched him, while lightly touching the burn scars that littered his face. In that instance he noticed Midoriya was wearing a UA uniform. I wonder what kind of hero will you become? He slowly stepped into the alley next to him, blue fire covering his hands. The next day, after sitting through a variety of lessons, the class of 1A were sitting down chattering away to each other while awaiting the teacher who would take them to their first lesson of heroics. Looking down at the palm of his hand, Midoriya looked at the cold blue glow that flickered every so often. The heat the small flame emitted far surpassing that of any explosion he or Bakugo had ever released alone. He gently cupped his hands together and held the flicker of light in his palms, feeling the heat beginning to burn the skin of his hands just slightly as its heat far exceeded the resistance of explosion. Midoriya, Midoriya. The sound of Uraraka calling his name caused him to lose focus, causing forth to flare for a seconds before flickering out. OW. Midoriya had burned his hand on one of his oldest quirks. Oh sorry, I just wanted to ask you why your cousin is always so angry. I'm sorry, who? Midoriya said in shock. Your cousin, you know Bakugo? What? Yeah, you know you both have similar quirks, so you have to be related, right? Me and Bakugo aren't dash, as he tried to correct Uraraka. I am here, coming through the door like a normal person. The #1 hero in Japan burst through the door, cutting Midoriya off from correcting Uraraka. The entire class sat there in shock, slowly realizing that the #1 hero was going to teach them how to be heroes. Now then, the most important thing that you're going to need to become a hero is right here. All Might pointed his right hand forward towards the back of the class. Your hero costumes. The wall at the back of the class opened to reveal several shelves that slid forward, each labeled with a number that had already been assigned to each student. Grab your costumes, get changed, and meet me in the control room for ground beta. The number 1 hero rushed out of the room faster than anyone could even blink. Grabbing the suitcase containing his costume, Midoriya rushed to the changing rooms as quickly as he possibly could. Opening up the case, Midoriya found the costume was exactly as he had described: a lightly armored jumpsuit with a utility belt wrapped around the waist with several tools, all capable of interacting with his various quirks. Pulling off his shirt, the sound of someone else stepping into the changing room reminded him that he wasn't going to be alone in there. Turning around, Midoriya saw Shoto Todoroki staring at him, or more accurately at the large starburst burn scar on the right side of his chest, and all the small burn scars that made up a series of line and patterns along his arms. Shoto looked up, looked him in the eye, and just for a second Midoriya thought he could see sympathy, maybe even understanding. But then it vanished as he too started to get changed. 10 minutes later, walking into the control room, the number 1 hero looked at his first class with pride as they walked in like the heroes they would become. Leading the charge, Midoriya walked just ahead of the rest of his classmates, directly in the center of them with his head held high. The green and black jumpsuit lined with armor plating that either absorbed the light around him or reflected it with an almost harsh green glare. Now you look like heroes. Each student began looking over each other's costumes and support equipment, complementing each other's choices. Whoa, Midoriya, you look so cool. Thanks, Uraraka, you look cool too. This caused the young heroine to blush a bright red. Ah, thanks, it's not really what I wanted, but apparently it works so. Now, young heroes, can you guess what your first training session will be? A city-wide drill, sir. The hand of Lita Tenya was raised above the group. No, young Lita, today you will be doing anti-personal training. The class looked at him bewildered, only just realizing that the number 1 hero was using a set of prompt cards. You will be split into pairs and then fight against another pair inside of one of the buildings within the area. Each team will either be heroes or villains. The main objective of the heroes is to capture the bomb, which will be hidden inside the building, or to defeat the villains so they are unable to carry on. The villains have to defend the bomb by preventing the heroes from touching it until the time runs out, or by defeating them. Your opponent is defeated if they are knocked unconscious or if you can wrap your capture tape around their wrists. The entire class looked at each other, each person showing fire in their eyes as they prepared to face off. And the first 2 heroes are Izuku Midoriya and Kyuka Jiro, and they will be up against Katsuki Bakugo and Shoto Todoroki. First, Midoriya looked at his partner, the girl with headphone plugs for earlobes, and then at his opponents. The boy who has spent his entire life trying to ruin him, and the boy whose birth had inadvertently led to him gaining his 4th quirk. Now, villains, make your way up to the bomb. Heroes, you have 5 minutes to strategize on how to beat your opponents. 5 minutes later. Heroes, villains, begin. Both hero students slowly stepped into the building, prepared for anything. Suddenly a burst of ice spread throughout the room, covering every surface within. The ice had trapped both Midoriya and Kyuka in their tracks, but it barely mattered because seconds later Kyuka had used her support gear to unleash a sound wave that shattered the ice that prevented them from moving forward. Both hero students worked their way through each floor, eliminating each layer of the building through process of elimination in their search for the bomb until they reached the 4th floor. Deku. The explosive Pomeranian charged forwards, using his explosions to propel himself over the still intact ice. Midoriya quickly pushed Jiro out of the way and shifted into a stance ready to defend himself against his old bully. Bakugo was screaming as he reached out to punch him. Die! But before his punch could succeed, Midoriya grabbed a hold of his right arm and slammed him into the ground. Looking into his eyes, Midoriya activated foresight and began to execute the plan that would win them the match. Jiro, quick, run up to the 5th floor, that's where Todoroki has the bomb. His teammate nodded and rushed up to face the icy threat. Even if earplugs makes it there, icy hot will destroy her, you lose, Deku. Bakugo dived towards Midoriya, arms and hands outstretched ready to blow him to pieces, and then for just a second everything stopped. For just a second Midoriya stopped and focused on foresight. He saw every move Bakugo would make and he planned accordingly how to respond, how to capture him, and finally where the bomb was and what Todoroki's plan had been. Jump, block. Every move perfectly calculated to evade or block every attack Bakugo used against him, causing him to stumble over his feet again and again. Eventually Midoriya had lured his old bully into a room whose wall was the only thing separating them from outside. The time was now. Soon the match would be over and Midoriya would prove that he wasn't going to let Bakugo push him down ever again. Click! The sound came from the large gauntlets on Bakugo's forearms. The sound was greeted with a large smirk and cruel eyes that betrayed his intentions. Well would have if Midoriya didn't already know exactly what he would do. Do you remember how my quirk works, Deku? You use it often enough. Midoriya could only nod. Good, cause my gauntlets condense my sweat and use it to trigger explosions more than 10 times more powerful than any natural explosion I can emit. Bakugo lifted up his arm and aimed the weapon at Midoriya. More powerful than anything your pathetic knockoff can do. Young Bakugo, stop! If you fire that weapon you will kill him. The voice of All Might echoed through the room. Only if it hits. The smirk on Bakugo's face grew crueler. Boo-wam. 30 seconds ago. Jiro ran into the room containing the heterochromic villain and the weapon that he was guarding. Surrender, Ugh. She had been frozen in place after barely getting 2 steps into the room, the trail of ice leading back to Todoroki's right foot. The boy slowly walked over to her step by step until he was barely 2 feet away. It's over. Once Bakugo has taken out Midoriya, the match will be finished and we will have won. We just need to wait. And so they did. The next 20 seconds passed slowly as Todoroki began to slowly pace around the room. Boom! The sound and impact of Bakugo's ultimate weapon shook the entire building. A large smash was heard and before long the wall collapsed inwards, showing both the outside and Midoriya suspended in midair. Now, Midoriya waited until the last moment before activating his secret weapon, the 5th quirk he had ever copied, size. Activating it, Midoriya could feel the wall that he had been pressed against begin to shrink, the cement cracking as the very framework of the wall that he had touched begin to shrink, crushing the wall with it. With no wall behind him, Midoriya was launched backwards through the air and onto the roof of a nearby building. Midoriya activated size once more, focusing on the marbles that he dropped as he had been launched from the room. The sudden growth of the 3 marbles pushed Bakugo out of the room and caused him to smack his head onto the floor, knocking him unconscious just as Midoriya had foreseen. It also caused large cracks to expand out from the walls of the room. Katsuki Bakugo has been defeated. 1 villain and 2 minutes remain. Breathlessly, Midoriya thought to himself, let's finish this. Using explosion to launch himself into the air, Midoriya draw level with the room on the 5th floor where Todoroki had made his base. Utilizing explosion, Midoriya shattered the wall into chunks of cement only to see Todoroki standing there looking at him in awe. Midoriya launched himself forward and reached out to grab a hold of the bomb. A long stream of ice raced towards him, but he would not be stopped. Blue flames coated his hair, his shoulders and every limb as Midoriya released a hint of the true power of his 4th quirk to propel himself forward, the one whose name he did not know. Shoto looked at him in shock. He had only ever seen blue flames such as those once before, the night his brother had died. How was it possible no other fire quirk had ever been as hot as that one? How did Midoriya have his brother's quirk? 11 years ago. The Todoroki household was a place of silence and perfect manners at all times. The only time when the silence would be disturbed was when the number 2 hero took 1 or both of his sons with fire-type quirks for a training session, and that time was now. Come on, Shoto, use more of your fire, push it to its full heat, show me why you will be the one to surpass All Might. The 4-year-old could barely stand after such an intense session. Father, enough. Stop this please, you've pushed him too far, can't you see he can't last much longer? And surely enough, the eldest Todoroki brother was right, his youngest brother could barely stand, he was overheating from his quirk overuse as their father refused to let him use the ice half of his quirk in this session. How dare you interrupt, boy? Your brother will become my successor while you and your broken quirk with your other failure siblings will never be a part of my legacy. Tuya looked at the man who he hated more than anything else in the world. He stepped between him and his brother. I will not be a part of your legacy. You will not hurt Shoto. blue flames liked across his skin. Tuya could feel them starting to burn his flesh just seconds after using them. So you finally decided to stand up to me, The smirk on face grew. Let's see what you can do. Flames flew across the room, both blue and red, deflecting off walls and scorching the training room. The youngest brother stood behind his eldest sibling, thankful that for once someone was protecting him from the wrath of Endeavor. The fight raged for barely 5 minutes, but when it was over, Shoto had been pushed outside and the entire room was engulfed in flames. Only Endeavor walked out of the room, and even then he was littered with burns, including what would become a scar that stretches down his left arm forevermore. All that was left of Tuya was ash, or at least that's what they thought. From that day forth, Shoto swore never to use his fire again, the fire of Endeavor, the fire that killed his brother. 2 days later, after the funeral, his mother burned his face, leaving him with his own scar just like Endeavor. This only solidified his belief that his Endeavor's flames were a curse never to be used again. Now, the blue flames emitted so much heat that the ice never even reached Midoriya. In fact, every trace of the ice around the room was gone, and Midoriya's fist was clenched tight, pressed against the bomb. The hero team Yis. Shoto looked at Midoriya with fire in his eyes. Who was he, and how did he have Tuya's quirk? He wanted answers, and he wanted them now. Command Center. No way, Midobro is so manly. How did he do that? I thought he had an explosive quirk. Yeah, what's going on? It's like he used 3 different quirks. 4. The entire class turned to face Yaoyorozu. What? Mina said quietly. He used 4 quirks: the explosions, the blue fire, the size modification, and the one that let him dodge all Bakuga's attacks like they didn't exist. The winning team walked into the room and barely a second later were slowly followed by Todoroki, facing downwards in shame, all of them looking only a little bit worse for wear. The entire class stared at Midoriya. What's everyone staring at? He said. How do you have 4 quirks? That's what this is about, he spoke calmly. The entire class was silent, waiting for an answer. I can copy quirks permanently through a method I'm not comfortable sharing, and it's 6 quirks, not 4. I have 5 copied quirks, and the quirk that lets me copy other quirks. Now, if you will excuse me, I am covered in cement dust, and I would love to clean off, so if you will excuse me, I am going to hit the showers. The entire class watched as he left the room and began to slowly murmur among themselves. Shoto looked at the door carefully before looking away. How and when did you copy my brother's quirk, Midoriya? I need to know. Right then, back to the battle trials. Next up, Aji. That evening, the Todoroki household. The 3 remaining Todorokis that lived in the compound sat down to dinner that night, each in absolute silence, silence that was broken by Endeavor's voice. Shoto, how was your first lesson of heroics? I expect that you won. Shoto gulped and spoke quietly. I lost. Fuyumi looked shocked and Endeavor equally so. The number 2 hero cleared his throat and spoke a single word. How? Speaking through his teeth in a gruff tone. One of the guys in my class has a copy quirk, one that's permanent. He has 5 different quirks, and Kichi has Tuya's quirk. What? Fuyumi started shaking. That's impossible. Endeavor looked at both of his children and they at him, and after a second they both realized something. The look on Endeavor's face was fear, pure absolute fear. Walking to school that morning, Midoriya was thinking heavily about an offer that he had just been given to him the night before, one that could help him be an even better hero. It was an offer he had heard many times before, but for the first time he was actually considering it. Should I do it? It might help me, but then again, what could it do to me if it reacts like I think it could? It could make me stronger, but the constant murmuring of the Midoriya family was like a secondary quirk, and very little could shake them out of it. Hey Midoriya. The sound of Monoma's voice was one of those things and reminded Izuku of where he was, a block away from the entrance to the greatest hero school in Japan, and what he was supposed to be doing. Hey Monoma. Pausing for a second to allow his friend catch up, Midoriya thought that he should ask his friend what his opinion would be on an offer he had received last night. After all, it was related to their shared type of quirk, plus this offer had been repeated a lot. Hey Monoma, I was wondering, can you copy mutation type quirks? Nope, I can only copy emitter and transformation type quirks, but if they have a minor mutation then I can gain it for as long as I am copying the quirk. Why can you Not really. I can copy emitters and transformation type quirks, but if it's a minor enough mutation I might be able to copy them, but it could take a while to show itself. Okay then, why did you ask? One of my friends has a quirk that lets her take on people's appearance by drinking their blood, and it lasts for a while, and she thinks that since a person's blood is always in my system after I copy their quirk, it may be possible for me to partially transform into them and use their quirk like I do the other two types. Monoma stopped for a second and thought about his friend's opportunity for a second. You should do it, Monoma spoke solemnly. What? Midoriya was shocked by how quickly his friend had told him to copy a quirk. Midoriya, hear me out, okay? One day you're going to come across a villain who can stop emitter and transformation type quirks easily, and when you do, you are going to wish you had a mutant type quirk on standby to stop the villain in their tracks. Okay, but what if? Midoriya was trying to come up with a reason not to copy his friend's quirk. There is no what if, Midoriya. If you don't have a mutant type quirk in your roster when you need it, you might not make it back, okay? You might die in that situation. I mean, that's why we are training to be heroes, to do what no one else can, right? What do you mean? Monoma cut him off just as quickly as he had stopped talking. We can do what no one else can. When other heroes are stopped by villains, we can face them head-on with their own quirks. When the accidents are so terrible other heroes don't stand a chance, we can use multiple quirks to save twice, no, 3 times as many people and clear the danger faster than anyone else. That is why I decided to become a hero, to do what other heroes can't, to be the hero that can overcome any threat, to save the people who would become another statistic on a casualty report if I wasn't there. Izuku looked at his friend with awe. They both had dreams that to anyone else would mean nothing, but to them and the people like them it would mean more than could ever be imagined, and Midoriya knew that one day a kid like them would look up at them or watch a video of their debut and realize that anyone can become a hero, no matter what their quirk does. What's it like having the symbol of peace as your teacher? What kind of lessons is All Might teaching you? How many lessons have you had with All Might? Can you tell us why the symbol of peace decided to teach at UA? Distracted by their own conversation, the two future heroes had wandered into a horde of reporters, all eager to grab the scoop of a lifetime with both hands. The two boys could barely push their way through without constantly being asked questions and constantly being pushed back further into the horde. Across the street. There, that's him, the boy with the green hair. Across the street, Shoto pointed out Midoriya to Endeavor, who had insisted on accompanying him to school that day, even going as far as to reveal that he had made an appointment with Principal Nizu to discuss several important matters, including possible guest talks and teaching days where Endeavor could come in to provide special training. Not very impressive stature-wise. I will have to wait and see how he uses this variant of my quirk. Shoto shuddered. He hated hearing Endeavor claim his brother's quirk. He didn't deserve to, he didn't have the right to. A minute later, Monoma and Midoriya had finally pushed their way through the reporters and had made it past the gates into UA. Both, you should hurry up. Class begins in 5 minutes, and if I find out that either of you are late by even a second, I will make this year's hero training so harsh anyone who hears about it will forget they ever heard of the legendary training schedule of Gran Torino. Understood? Yes, Sensei. Good. As Eraserhead turned to deal with the reporters, the two boys turned to face each other. Who's Gran Torino Midoriya? He's an old-school hero who was a teacher here at UA for a year or so. Sir says that his training was so tough that even his class was thankful not to have experienced it. Whoa, that's cool. I will have to ask Vlad King about him later. See you after school, Midoriya, and remember, take your friend up on that offer before it's too late, shouted Monoma as he started running towards Hero Class 1B. Yeah, sure. But as Midoriya started to walk further towards the main school, he heard chaos erupt from outside the gate. He turned around, and standing before him was the greatest villain the world may never know. Endeavor, the hero with the highest casualty count in Japan. He had burned every villain he had ever caught, permanently scarring most of them, and Midoriya truly believed with all his heart was the man that had murdered his Tuya Todoroki. He stared at him with hate in his eyes, and as the number 2 hero walked past him with Shoto by his side, Endeavor turned his head and looked him in the eyes, and Endeavor thought to himself, those eyes, those cold raging eyes, they're Tuya's eyes. 24 hours later. Speaking of quirks, doesn't Midoriya have that weird blue fire quirk? Said Azui. Yeah, come on, Midobro, tell us. Where did you copy that blue fire quirk from? Shouted Kirishima. Yeah, tell us, come on, we already know where most of your quirks are from anyway. Where did you get the blue fire quirk from? Yeah, tell us. The sound of his classmates begging did little settle our hero's mind. I'd also like to know, Midoriya. I have never seen a fire quirk quite like that one before, spoke Lita. Shoto sat quietly at the back of the bus waiting for Midoriya to tell everyone exactly how he had copied his brother's quirk, but Midoriya didn't respond. He just sat there quietly waiting for the bus to arrive at the location of that day's heroics training. But after a few moments he spoke. I copied it from someone who believed I could be a hero before his father murdered him. Midoriya had spoken quietly, but everyone had still heard what he had said. The entire bus went silent. No one spoke a word, and no one noticed the silent tear that rolled down Shoto's face, right down the middle of his scar, and fell silently onto the floor. The bus rolled to a stop. We are here. The sound of Eraserhead's voice pierced the silence, but it didn't get rid of it, not truly. The USJ. The group exited the bus and slowly walked into a large domed area, so massive that it could encompass more than 4 football stadiums. Welcome. A hero was standing in the central walkway, and as they stepped through the large gate they noticed that the area they were in was divided up into 7 different areas. To the Unforeseen Joint Simulator, or as we call it, the USJ. Nowhere space hero thermur quirk black holice perfecto handly thieftermath and clean buff natural desisteris the thave happened a love. The entire class just stared at Uraraka in absolute silence. And I thought Deku was the quirk nerd. Almost the entire class seemed to nod. This was the only time they would ever agree with Bakugo. Correct, Miss Uraraka, my quirk is perfect for helping to clean up the aftermath of natural disasters, but it could just as easily be used for villainy, to tear people apart in an instant. Almost the entire class had a shocked look on their face, but for 4 members of the class their faces remained the same: Shoto, Izuku, Kirishima, and Aoyama. As 13 lectured them about what they had learned in their previous heroics classes and on how dangerous their quirks could be. A dark mist appeared in the central plaza, twisting and growing until it became a large gate that stopped anyone from seeing the main fountain at the center of the USD. Slowly a figure dressed in a black long-sleeved shirt and trousers emerged from the mist, followed by a hulking purple figure as large as All Might with a beak-like mouth and its brain exposed. The two were followed by a horde of individuals, each dressed in unique outfits carrying a variety of support gear and weapons. Eraserhead noticed the horde and readied himself, pulling his goggles up over his eyes and preparing his capture weapon for combat. 13 villains in the central plaza. Evacuate the students immediately. But sir, we can help, shouted Mina. No retreat, Aizawa ordered. Without a second thought, Eraserhead leapt from the top of the walkway and landed at the edge of the army of villains. Right, students, come on, we have to get out of here, gestured 13. As the students turned around and began to run for the exit, the dark smoke that had foreshadowed the arrival of the villains began to appear again as the villain who had warped the other villains to USJ appeared before them. Good afternoon, young hero. Students, I am Kurogyri and we are the League of Villains. The entire class froze in their tracks. Has there been a change to the schedule? I noticed that All Might isn't here yet, or will he arrive later? It doesn't matter, I have my orders and you are not permitted to Lia Dash. Dai Yubish. The fog swallowed Bakugo and suddenly a huge explosion was heard from the ruins zone. The entire class, even 13, was frozen with fear. Now where was I? Oh yes, that's right, scatter. The fog engulfed everyone. The mountain zone. Midoriya could feel himself falling through the air. Purple smoke obscured his vision, preventing him from knowing up from down, left from right. But after a minute the fog vanished and Midoriya was falling towards the mountain zone. All of a sudden ice covered a large area of the mountain, and suddenly Izuku noticed that the mountain had many small ant-like figures which were trapped, frozen in place by the ice. Focus, come on, focus. A series of explosions and blue fire burst from his palms and spun him around and around and around, until eventually he was facing the central plaza while suspended in midair. The sight that greeted him would forever haunt his dreams. Below him, Shoto had single-handedly frozen every villain on the mountain and, like Midoriya, was staring at the central plaza. Turning to face one of the villains, Shoto created a small blade of ice in the palm of his hand and spoke loudly to every single villain that could hear him. In a few moments most of you will begin to experience frostbite, and if you would like to avoid losing any fingers or limbs today, then you will tell me exactly what your goal is here and what your intentions were towards us students. Most of the villains looked at each other nervous. We came to kill All Might, we don't care about the students, we just want to get rid of the symbol of peace. One of the villains immediately shouted out. How? That giant purple thing that Tamura Shigaraki brought with him? He said it was designed to be as strong as All Might. Apparently it has multiple quirks and would be able to take on All Might face to face at his full power. At that moment Midoriya released a large explosion and rocketed towards the central plaza. Midoriya, wait. Shoto activated Half Cold and raced after Midoriya, speeding towards the plaza. He had to stop him, he had to stop Midoriya from facing that thing, if only to stop the last part of Tuya, his brother, from dying. The central plaza. You really are my favorite hero, you know that? The dark-clothed figure stood over the broken body of Eraserhead and spoke with a slightly rasping voice. Fighting practically quirkless, controlling exactly how much you hurt the villains you face, you have all the makings of the perfect villain with a matching quirk to complete the set, so join us Eraserhead, help us turn this world to dust. Cough cough, never I am a hero, and I will fight to save them just like, cough cough, Oboro. The villain looked downtrodden for a second before looking up again. Oh well, I guess you will just have to have a hero's death then, such a shame, we could have been such good friends. The villain reached for Aizawa's face with his hands splayed. Get away from him. Midoriya rocketed into view, slamming his foot into his enemy's side, sending him sprawling across the ground, rolling over and over again until he was over 10 meters away. Shigaraki slowly pushed himself off the ground until he was standing once more. Just like you heroes, no regard for what you do to your opponents, you're all just government lackeys made to hurt people again and again and again. The two were facing each other, neither willing to stand down. How dare you? Remember my name, I am Izuku Midoriya and I am no one's lackey. I will become a hero to prove to the world that anyone can become a hero regardless of their quirk or upbringing. The white-haired villain burst out laughing. I am the one who will turn this world and its heroes to dust. It's nice to meet you Izuku Midoriya, and remember my name, I am Tamura Shigaraki, leader of the League of Villains, and I will kill you. The two faced each other, both of them preparing to attack, neither realizing that this was the day that it begins, the day that the legend began. The legend of the greatest hero, the successor to inherit the hopes of the world and defeat all for one, and the legend of the greatest villain to ever fall, the successor who will inspire more fear than his mentor, for he will be the one who killed one for all. Tamura Shigaraki and Izuku Midoriya stood facing each other, the rubble that once made up the central plaza surrounding them. Eraserhead crushed beneath the hulking purple figure, a pool of blood slowly spreading outwards from his broken body. The two foes stretching their palms outwards, both thinking the same thing, that whoever was able to touch their opponent first with all 5 fingers would win the day. The two foes ran at each other as fast as they possibly could, stretching their palms outwards. Both combatants rushed past each other, hands ready to finish this fight before it had even begun. Facing away from each other, they now stood just over 3 meters apart. The arm of Midoriya's costume crumbling to dust, his skin untouched while his eyes glowed a soft blue. Tamura Shigaraki turned around, a feral grin displayed proudly on his face. Now die. But in facing Midoriya, he realized he had missed his target and had only disintegrated his enemy's costume, and if his opponent was able to recover, who knows how long this fight could go on, or if it was over before it had even had the chance to begin. Grow. That one word spoken from Midoriya's lips was barely heard by Shigaraki, but he definitely felt its effects. Midoriya turned around, his fingertips touching each other, and Shigaraki's eyes widened as the hand on his face seemed to grow larger and larger until it fell over his face, over his entire body like a giant hand-shaped cage entrapping him. Father, what did you do to father, you hero scum? I used my quirks to select the item that I thought you would be most attached to, and then I transformed it into a prison you would refuse to destroy. Not catching the part where Midoriya had revealed he had multiple quirks, Shigaraki looked at him with such hate. Midoriya knew that whatever happened, this would not be their last fight. Tamura Shigaraki 13 is disabled, but I regret to inform you that one of the hero students was able to escape. Our time here is limited. The black fog that made up Kurogyari appeared once again. The smoky villain surprised to see that Shigaraki had been trapped. I don't care about that, this mini-boss just trapped me with my own father and now I can't kill him. You destroy this mini-boss? The purple figure, now identified as Nomu, leapt off of Aizawa and sped towards Midoriya, its right hand outstretched to crush him within its grip. Midoriya desperately tried to use foresight to see what the Nomu was going to do, but all he could see was Tamura Shigaraki laughing inside his former mask-turned-prison. Not knowing what to do, Midoriya froze. 10 years ago. Come on, show us. Yes, show us. Okay, fine, but just once. A small burst of blue fire was unleashed from the palm of his hand. Wow. It's so cool. Much cooler than Dad's. Agreed. The boy looked at the other children around him with a smile on his face. He loved the fact that his fire could bring them so much joy. Shoto, Tuya, it's time for training. The two boys looked down the nearby corridor towards the large figure standing there in front of the training room. It was Endeavor. Both boys stood up and slowly started to walk towards him. Remember, Shoto, do whatever he tells you to do in there, and if I say run, you run, okay? Okay. 5 years ago. Fuyumi Todoroki was standing in the kitchen preparing dinner while talking to her younger brothers. I'm just saying, Natsuo, that if you gave him a chance you would realize he has a lot of stress on his shoulders. So that excuses him, does it? Well, no, but he killed Tuya. Fuyumi, do you remember that? It was an accident. Like hell it was. He just doesn't care about us, you have to accept it. That's not true. Of course it is, he only wants to be the one that beats All Might, that's all he cares about and that's all he ever will. Shoto, tell him he is wrong. Natsuo's right, Fuyumi. He spoke quietly. What, that's not true. Yes, it is. Endeavor doesn't care about us, he just wants one of us to replace All Might, and that's the only reason any of us were even born in the first place. Shoto. Fuyumi's voice was broken, shaking. She just stood there refusing to believe the truth that both her brothers knew to be true. Shoto Todoroki was speeding forwards upon an ever-growing track of ice towards the central plaza, remembering every moment when his family had been broken. I will save you, Midoriya, I swear. For you may not be my brother, but somehow within you lives the last piece of him, and I swear I will do right by his fire and prevent it from going out no matter what the cost. Yesterday, I know Midoriya copied Tuya's quirk Nizu, I want to know how, and then I want you to ensure that he joins my agency for the internships, understood? Shoto was leaning against the side of the door of the principal's office, listening to Endeavor's private meeting with the principal. As I have told you before, NG, I have no control over what agencies the students choose for their internships, and I am under no obligation to reveal the circumstances which Midoriya was placed in when he copied your son's quirk. In fact, I was completely unaware of this fact until you brought it to my attention today. And I swear I will protect you from Endeavor. Central Plaza. A wall of ice burst from the edge of the plaza and slammed into the Nomu. Midoriya fell to his knees, the breath that he had been holding escaping his lungs, a look of relief washing over his face. Cheaters! Tamura Shigaraki gripped the fingers of his prison cell and turned the hand that was once on his face to dust in almost an instant. Kurogyari, kill those hero brats. Yes, Tamura Shigaraki. The purple smoke slowly started to glide across the ground towards the two boys. One way, only one way out. Midoriya focused on a small piece of broken concrete that he had sighted not seconds ago and pulled it towards him. It pierced through the collar, hidden deep within Kurogyari's smoky body, and flew into Midoriya's hand, a black-purply liquid coating the fragment with purple smoke slowly drifting into the air. He lifted the fragment to his lips and liked the fragment. Midoriya, don't. Shoto reached forward to stop him, already suspicious and scared of what Midoriya was about to do, but he was too late. Midoriya had already swallowed the blood. Smoke burst from Midoriya, hair flowing out of it like purple flames. It burst from his mouth and nose, dragging up over his eyes, concealing his entire face from the villains and heroes of the UA. Midoriya fell to his knees, still screaming, the smoke lightly drifting from his palms and exposed skin hiding the last visible parts of his skin and most of his costume. Everyone stared at him frozen until after barely a minute the smoke faded just enough to see Midoriya's body and face before he collapsed to the ground, smoke still lightly drifting off his skin. Well, it seems this mini-boss takes recoil damage whenever he uses his ultimate move, ha 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 ha. Tamura Shigaraki collapsed in a fit of laughter, the ground around him cracking every time he touched it with his bare palms. Bong. It's okay now, do you know why? Shigaraki stopped laughing and stood up, his face darkened by a smirk. All Might, finally we can finish this. Because I am here. The number one hero walked down the stairs, steam billowing around him every step he took, slightly cracking the steps beneath his feet, his hair standing up straight, his muscles bulging, but his smile, well, he wasn't smiling. And I'm you now. A purple blur burst from the ice and slammed into All Might. The two juggernauts were both sent flying from the sheer force of their initial impact, with both being flung towards the edge of the other side of the plaza. Now that's dealt with, Kurogyari, deal with that multicolored brat. Of course, Tamura. The menacing fog drifted forward towards Todoroki, the mist spilling the ground, growing ever closer. Bang, 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 bang. The sound of All Might's fight sounded like a clock ticking ever closer to its end, and Shoto knew at this moment in time he would never get to be a hero, he would never get be free of the shadow of endeavor. No. The fog continued to drift forward ever closer. No. Shoto was backed up against the side of the fountain. No. Tamura Shigaraki was laughing at the murder he was about to witness. No. The fog at the side of the plaza where Shoto once stood faded away. The students standing at the top of the stairs could only look down with both fear and admiration for their fellow students, the ones who were fighting. Purple smoke with a green hue and the blue fire of Tuya's quirk overwhelmed Kurogyari, pushing him back further and further. Shoto looked to Midoriya, who was somehow standing strong despite just experiencing an incredibly painful side effect of his quirk. Purple smoke was drifting from his hair, both with hands pushed forward, expelling smoke from his right hand and fire from his left. Shudo Aizawa looked up from the pool of blood that surrounded him. Oboro, he said, looking directly at Midoriya. You have lost today, Tamura Shigaraki, and do you know why? Tamura stood there in absolute silence, watching as his warp gate was overwhelmed by some form of his own quirk. No, then I will tell you why. It's because we know what it means to be a hero. Stepping forward with each word, he now stood in front of Shoto. The heterochromic boy just sat there looking up at his saver, but all he could see was the training room, his brother's fire protecting him, and his brother himself standing beside him. Boom! The Nomu was sent flying from the ruins zone and through the glass dome that surrounded the UA. It means to go beyond. A ball of the purple-green smoke gathered together between his hands, plus UL to Midoriya fired the ball of smoke directly at the two villains, and the ball opened into a warp gate which surrounded Tamura and Kurogyari before disappearing into nothing. Edge of the ruins zone. Yagi Toshinori stood there overlooking the plaza, his eyes wide, his bony body shaky. Young Midoriya, you truly are brilliant. Before he watched as the boy collapsed. Where is that brat? Where is he? Tamura. I swear I will turn him into dust. Tamura. I will destroy him. Tamura. What is it, Kurogyari? Well, it may have escaped your attention, but we appear to be up the side of a mountain. Oh well, take us home then. I'm afraid can't, Tamura. While my housing unit is damaged, my quirks is focused on maintaining my body, making it so that I am incapable of transporting us home until it is repaired. So what are we going to do? I'm afraid that we are going to have to wait for Sensei to find us on the tracker that he has on my suit. And how long is that going to take? At least 3 hours based on the terrain and however long it takes to get our signal. And who sent us here? I believe he was the kid with green hair. I swear I will kill you, Midoriya Izuku. Tamura, I do believe Sensei told you to stop talking to thin air. Shut up, Kurogyari. Outside the UJ. I need an ambulance now. Frostbite on at least 5 villains. At least 3 people with broken bones. 1 major case of quirk exhaustion. Officers were running all over the place, escorting villains out of the facility alongside students who had not yet made it out. We are here now at the USJ, a training facility designed and used by UA High School where Class 1A has been attacked by a new group called the League of Villains. This group is reported to have used a bioengineered weapon to distract the symbol of peace while attempting to massacre the next generation of heroes. News reporters were gathered around the side of the barrier of police cars and ambulances that were treating the various injuries and preparing to transport the students. Thankfully, one student is reported to have gone above and beyond their quirk's limits and was able to defeat the leaders of this league through a method which sent the leaders of the league to an unknown location, likely saving the majority of their classmates. And here they are now. The students of Class 1A were escorted onto a bus by two pro-heroes. I see both Vlad King and Powerloader are escorting the students which have been located onto the bus, which will be transporting them to the school to receive non-urgent medical attention, while the hero of the USJ, whose name has yet to be released, alongside 13 and 1A's homeroom teacher have been airlifted to the hospital. Got two more electrics here? Load 'em up. Sir, got one of the villains here. He says he is ready to make a deal. Put him in truck 3, we will see what they have for us. Where is my son? Pro-hero Endeavor has arrived on the scene and is looking for his son as we speak. Is he one of the injured? Mr. Endeavor, your son is on the bus as we speak, sir. Not Shoto, you miserable beat cop. Where is Midoriya? Izuku, the boy who possesses my eldest son's quirk. A cup of tea was spilt in a dorm room. Who H's what? Natsuo Todoroki spoke quietly as he collapsed onto his bed. He is being transported to the hospital as we speak. He was the student who saved Eraserhead and defeated the head of the league. And there you have it, folks. UA student Izuku Midoriya, who reportedly has the quirk of the eldest son of Endeavor, is the hero of the USJ. Stay tuned for more as we will keep you updated with more news on this ongoing investigation. So we have a student here who, I don't know how to say this, but their arm has been it's been torn apart. Good morning, Japan. I'm Chitos Kazuki, and I will be bringing you all the latest on what's what and who's who, but first I will be bringing you exclusive coverage on what is now being referred to as the USJ incident. Last night, a group of previously unknown villains with an unknown objective broke into the USJ, an elite training facility used by the hero students of UA. Planning use a bioengineered weapon now identified as a Nomu to attack the newest member of the UA staff, the number 1 hero, All Might. The villains discovered the hero had yet to arrive, so they turned this weapon on his fellow teachers and students. Thankfully, one student stood up and truly went beyond, plus ultra, and using the power of his quirk was able to protect his classmates, and by copying one of the villain's own quirks, he was able to banish the villains through a warp gate with no known arrival destination, so where they are now remains a complete mystery. In other news, the hero of the USJ, Izuku Midoriya, alongside pro-heroes Eraserhead and 13 and an as of yet unidentified student, are currently receiving the best medical care available at a private hospital which specializes in quirk-related injuries. We wish them the best of luck in their recoveries and we hope to see them during the UA Sports Festival. Next up. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Izuku. 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 And with that, Midoriya's eyes opened. What? He's awake. Good. Nighteye, you're gonna want to see this. I'll be back in a second, Inko. Izuku looked around the room. His mother was sitting in a large chair next to him, and Sir had just left the room. Hey Izuku, she said comfortingly. Hey Mum, what's going on? He croaked. You were attacked at the USJ by some villains and you copied one of their quirks. Apparently it had some effect on you and you experienced quirk exhaustion. I don't really know how to explain. Dr. Ishido can do it better. He is going to be here in a minute. Okay, Mum. At that moment, Sir Nighteye walked back into the room, quickly putting his phone back into his pocket. Hey Midoriya. Hey sir, how's everyone doing? Slowly sitting up out of the hospital bed. Everyone is doing well, Izuku, and they wish you would come to the agency more. They also wished you all the best in getting better. And my classmates? Most of them are okay. Most? Aha, the Midoriyas and Nighteye, good to see you again. Standing in the doorway was the personal doctor and family friend of the Midoriyas, Dr. Ishido. Hey Doc, what's up? Izuku said, smiling. Not much, Izuku, just living life to the fullest, or as much as I can in that stuffy little office. Please Doc, you haven't had a small office since the day I walked into your office. Etching, now that is true. The doctor's face went solemn. But listen, Izuku, there is something you need to know about the quirks you recently copied. You mean quirk, right? He looked around for a second, but he was met with solemn looks, right? Izuku, the villain you faced, Kurogiri was, at least as far as we can tell, a kind of experiment, at least from the little blood we could test from you that wasn't yet absorbed, a kind of well-nomo like the villain that faced All Might. What? Izuku, when you copied the villain's quirk, you copied at least 3 completely different quirks which we know of that work together to create the warp gate quirk that Kurogiri used to break into you. Inko looked at Nighteye, his face as passive as ever in deep thought. You will need to train it as much as possible, of course, and then there's also the mutant aspect. Mutant aspect? I thought Zuku couldn't copy mutations. He can't, but one of his quirks was identified as Cloud, a quirk which once belonged to a hero student by the name of Oboro Shirakumo, whose quirk had a passive effect, causing wisps of his clouds to appear within his hair, which due to its coloration made them practically invisible, unlike what Izuku has now. Looking at his reflection in a mirror not far from the edge of his hospital bed, Izuku saw that what his doctor said to was true. His once green hair was now layered with small wisps of dark purple clouds which would drift through his curls with ease, dissipating just at the point beyond the edge of his hair. Given that Izuku has manifested this aspect of cloud, it is very possible the other quirks which gave Kurogiri his smoky body may manifest in time, especially if he were to copy a quirk which enabled him to transform his physical body, so just be careful what quirks you copy from now on, okay? Izuku nodded. Beyond that, just experiment with your quirks and see where you end up. Also, you should avoid copying any new quirks for a while just to let your body get used to the quirks you copied with Kurogiri. Izuku nodded. And I think you should come for a checkup in about a week's time, but apart from that, just keep doing what you're doing, Mr. Hero of the USJ. And with that, Dr. Ishido walked out of the room. Hero of the US what? Mum, what is he talking about? But Inko didn't respond. Sir, please tell me, what was he talking about? Sir looked down for a moment. Izuku, following the attack, one of the police officers let it leak that one of the students fought off the leaders of the league. That same officer later told Endeavor that it was you who fought off those same villains. The press were recording their entire conversation. Ah, indeed. Izuku suddenly remembered what Nighteye had said earlier in the conversation. Sir, earlier when you said most of my classmates were okay, what did you mean most? I need a crash cart now, we're losing him. Someone patch the wound now. Anyone with a fast healing quirk is needed in Op Room 6 stat. Blood transplants needed now. We need to remove the rest of the limb. Quirk is going haywire. I need quirk suppressant now or I'm not going to be able to works. Heart rate stable, let's move to recovery. Shota. 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 What? Can't you see I'm trying to sleep? Oh good, he's alright. Where am I? Why can't I see? The hospital. Shota. Do you remember the USJ? Yes. Well, you were severely injured and the doctors had to wrap you practically from head to toe in bandages. Midoriya, how's Midoriya? Is he okay? Midoriya is fine, Shota. In fact, the little listener is being called the hero of the USJ. What? Actually, I don't care right now. What about the rest of them? Are my students okay? Most of them are okay, but Shota, one of them lost their arm. Who? Come back to us, son. Come on, son, we need you. Man, you were so manly. I'm sorry you lost your arm, but at least you still have one, right? The sleeping body laid there in a hospital bed, a medical mask around his face, a monitor plugged in next to his bed, making a soft beep in perfect time with his heartbeat. Sitting around his bed were at least 5 of his classmates and his parents, and while they mostly sat in silence, every once in a while someone would stare at the space his left arm once occupied. Lost his arm. One of the villains tore his arm almost completely off. It was so bad they had to amputate what was left. Inko looked like she was about to be sick after hearing what had happened to Izuku's classmate. Izuku was silent, absolutely silent. He could barely think, let alone speak, after hearing this piece of news. He's also in a coma. The doctors don't know when he will wake up, if he will wake up, but if he does, they don't think he will ever be able to use his quirk like he once could. Nighteye walked over to Izuku's hospital bed and sat down next to Inko. You were very lucky, Izuku. If you hadn't confronted Shigaraki when you did, who knows how many people would be dead instead of just a few injuries, and your friend's current situation would be a lot worse. Right? Izuku was looking down, his face pale. You did well, kid, just don't blame yourself. Zuzu. Standing in the doorway was Himiko Toga, dressed in her school uniform, carrying a bag that looked suspiciously like it was full of sweets, chocolates and magazines. She rushed towards him and leapt with her arms outstretched, trapping him in a large breathtaking hug from which he couldn't escape. You're okay? Himiko can't breath. Oh right, sorry Zuzu. Himiko quickly releasing him from her life-stealing hug. Thanks Himiko, I don't mind if you want to give me a hug, I'd just like to breath. Sure Zuzu, also I brought those magazini zirial like note hienes without the quirkanalises and semibar soft cocolati note hienes with dash. Ha 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 ha. Both teens turned and looked at the laughing adults, both wiping tears from their eyes. What? They both yelled. Ha! You too, ha! Neither adult could get more than a few words out without bursting out into laughter. Welcome back to the news at one. I'm your host, and we are back with more exclusive news on the events of the USJ and the current condition of the individuals injured during this fight. Currently, the rescue hero 13 is in a coma but is expected to make a full recovery. The underground hero Eraserhead is also expected to make a full recovery with only a few scars. The hero of the USJ Izuku Midoriya is expected to make a full recovery after his fight with the two villains, and finally the state of the unrevealed UA student is in flux as staff of the hospital are constantly monitoring their condition. Bar stools were lying around the bar in various states of decay. Kurogyari was standing behind the bar dressed in a black waistcoat and white shirt with dark trousers. Why does this brat get all the attention? We attacked the USJ, we made history. Why does some hero wannabe get all the fame? Why are we downgraded to just villains? Tamura slowly reached for the TV, his hands splayed. Calm yourself Tamura, you will have plenty of other opportunities to make a name for yourself. The voice came from a separate TV on the other side of the room. Yes sensei, he grumbled. Kurogyari, this student, did he have a strength-based quirk or any super strength at all? It is vital to know. No master, he only used quirks which his fellow students had alongside an object-orientated size increasing quirk and a blue fire quirk which he used prior to copying mine. Interesting, a copy quirk. Izuku Midoriya, you will be a fascinating individual to watch. It's time Naomasa. I know it is Toshinori, especially after this fight, but are you sure it's him? You still have more time. No, it's him. I have been training him for months and he has more than earned it. He has the heart of a true hero. Okay, then I will call him in. Come in. Slowly a student in UA's uniform walked into the room and Naomasa turned to leave. I will be outside if you need me. Mr. Yagi, are you all right? I'm okay, my boy. I had my friend call you in because I wanted to talk to you about something. What is it? It's about my quirk. It's called One for All. Standing outside the hospital where Midoriya was located, crowds massed hoping to get a glimpse of him. Standing just on the edge of the crowd, a man was standing there with a black cardigan, wearing the hood up to cover his black hair and scarred face. He looked up towards a window and spoke a quick thanks into the wind and started to walk away. Hey, where are you going? Yeah, Midoriya hasn't come out yet. The figure stopped and turned his head slightly and spoke softly. I just came to say thanks and to show support for the guy who saved my brother. The figure continued to walk away. Further down the street until he was outside a small television store. Izuku Midoriya, the hero of USJ, is reported to have then used a blue fire-based quirk to repel the villains. The man stopped and turned to face the many screens. You really did use my quirk to be a hero, didn't you? So maybe that means I can too. And for the first time in 5 years, a small flicker of blue flames appeared in the palm of Tuya Todoroki's hand. The hospital room of Izuku Midoriya was filled to the rim with gifts, cards and chocolate, with most of the chocolate being from one Himiko Toga, a girl who due to her quirk would have been drawn to blood, but due to a lot of work and effort from both Vlad King and Kaizome Akaguro, her compulsion to blood had now been replaced by an even greater addiction to chocolate and all other sugary sweets. Come on Zuzu, just one more please. No Himiko, please, no more. The sugar-addicted blonde was sitting on her knees leaning towards Midoriya, trying to take a chocolate bar from his hand. Come on Zuzu, it's not just any chocolate, it's got these little bits of cookies in it. Come on, I promise it's the last one. No Himiko, stop please, you can't eat any more chocolate. But I want to eat the chocolate now. Himiko was grabbed the chocolate straight out of his hand. No Himiko, stop. Midoriya pushed against Himiko trying to grab the chocolate bar. Suddenly smoke burst from Midoriya's hands and consumed the hyperactive blonde before disappearing. Himiko! Midoriya looked around the now empty hospital room. A similar cloud of smoke appeared on the ceiling just in front of the end of his hospital bed. Himiko fell out of the clouds and onto the very hard floor. Izuku scrambled to the edge of the bed. Himiko, are you okay? No. Why, where you hurt your legs, your arms, your head? No. Then what? There was a brief moment of silence. I landed on top of my delicious cookie crumbled chocolate bar. There was another awkward moment of silence which was quickly broken when Midoriya burst out laughing. Haha. It's not funny. Ha 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 ha. Himiko leapt towards him, arms stretched in an attempt to strangle him. Arg har. Ah. Izuku moved his arms out to protect himself, and once again the purple smoke emerged and engulfed her before disappearing, leaving the room once again Himiko's. A few doors down. He has what? The sound of Present Mike's voice filled the room, the volume of his voice nearing the point where even a decibel louder and the likelihood of the room being torn apart would increase exponentially. The eyes of Eraserhead, or at least the parts that were visible, were wide open in shock from listening to what the principal had just said. His eyes slowly blinked as the injured hero spoke to the principal slowly. What do you mean he has Oboro's quirk Nizu? I mean that at the USJ, Izuku Midoriya fought and then proceeded to ingest the blood of Kurogiri, the villain with a warp-based quirk, and was almost completely made up of purple clouds. Falling out of a group of clouds that had appeared on the ceiling was one manic blonde who quickly pushed herself to her feet. Both men and the Prinikbal looked at her in shock. Where is he? Where is Zuzu? The Prinkbal smirked. 2 doors down on the right. The blonde rushed out of the room growling. The principal slowly turned back to his former student. Looks like Midoriya has been experimenting with his quirk now, as I was saying. Due to the very small amount of quirk analysis we were able to perform on Kurogiri, we now believe that he is a bioengineered weapon much like Nomu, the large creature that injured you. But that means dash. It does, Aizawa. It means that years ago when your friend, Oboro Shirakumo, died, the League of Villains, or at least the League's founders, stole Oboro's DNA or perhaps even his entire body and then proceeded to use it as the base for Kurogiri. We know this as Oboro's quirk seems to be the most prominent of Midoriya's newly gained quirks, with all the other quirks being connected to or reliant on it. Eraserhead collapsed backwards into his hospital bed. He couldn't focus, he felt like he was having a panic attack. I will give you some time to process. Principal Nizu started to walk towards the door. How many? The principal stopped walking. How many quirks did they put into Obo Kurogiri? Nizu spoke quietly. We believe 5 quirks, or at least that's the amount Midoriya copied. A quiet sob could be heard throughout the room, followed by the sound of a quiet murmur. No. Principal Nizu walked out of the room. Natsuo, over here. A white-haired boy walked across the cafe floor towards the table where his sister was sitting down, calling out to him. Hey Fuyumi, he spoke solemnly. She stood up and gave him a large hug, a hug that he didn't return. They both sat down, a solemn look still gracing his face. What's wrong, little bro? They sat in silence for a moment. Is it true? Is what true? That some kid in Shoto's class has our elder brother's quirk? Is that true, Fuyumi? He was speaking quietly, so quietly you could barely hear it, but Fuyumi did. Fuyumi just sat there, her hands holding a cup of coffee. It's true. Natsu collapsed backwards further into the chair that he was sitting in. How long? I'm sorry. How long have you known? Cold white clouds of frozen air were escaping his mouth as he spoke. Fuyumi looked down shamefully. I found out only a few days ago. Natsuo almost seemed to choke. So then there is a chance that Tuya is still alive, that our brother is still alive. He has to be for that kid to copy his quirk. He spoke quietly. Oh Natsuo, Fuyumi spoke quietly. Do you remember when we were a lot younger and Mum used to take us to the park every month? Yeah. Well, one time, when we were at the park, I saw Tuya sitting down and speaking to a kid who looked like he was the same age as Shoto, but he had green hair. And yesterday I saw a photo of Izuku Midoriya. They were the same person, so Midoriya must have copied Tuya's quirk that day at the park. Natsuo looked down, shaking a singed tear slowly falling down the right side of his face. So he's really gone, isn't he? Yeah, he is, Natsuo. Fuyumi stood up, walked around the table, gave her brother a tight hug. Both of them were silent. Standing outside the cafe, a man dressed in a black hoodie stepped away from the window and walked down a nearby alley. He would have been crying if only his tear ducts hadn't burned away years ago. Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Doctor? Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Doctor? I'm sorry, sir, but this is absolutely fantastic. All for one, and his oldest subordinate, who was also possibly his oldest friend, Dr. Kyudai Garaki, were both standing in one of the DR's many labs. I have never seen such a comprehensive copy-based quirk in my life. The very way the quirk functions is truly fascinating. First, by assimilating the blood of other individuals, giving the user access to their quirks, and then adapting the body at a fast enough rate that he replicates the original owner's natural resistance to the side effects of their quirks almost instantaneously. The doctor had in his hands a file filled with various scraps of paper and medical history. Can we use it for the Nomu's doctor? The doctor looked at AFO. Why, of course we can. If I am correct, when we get our hands on this kid, or even a few drops of his blood, we will be able to begin the process, produce more high-end Nomu than we can possibly imagine. Underneath his large medical mask, All for One smiled a cruel smile. We may even be able to produce a superior version of Gigantomachia. All for One's smile grew even wider. The doctor's smile grew wider as well. It is such a shame, though. A shame, doctor? Yes, a shame. I was supposed to be the doctor who did Midoriya's quirk checkup. If only Tamura hadn't destroyed those prototype Nomus that day, we could have had access to this kid's quirks so much sooner. Beep. A dark alley was flooded with blue light, flames washing over the walls as a figure dressed in a black hoodie slowly walked towards a man who was desperately trying to crawl away from him. You come here into this city, the city where my family lives, and you dare to put their lives in danger. The figure raised his right hand and let blue flames engulf it. No, please let me go. I'm sorry, but for what you were about to do, I will show you no mercy. The man had tears streaming down his face. Blue fire engulfed the man, leaving behind nothing but a few ash-covered bones. The figure looked at them for a moment, letting his actions sink in. And here I was thinking that you were some underground hero, but no, you're just some common vigilante. The figure turned to face the area where the voice had come from, and a man dressed in a strange ninja getup with a red scarf-like mask covering the area around his eyes, with blades strapped across his body and a large katana strapped to his back. I am Stain, the one who shall wipe the false heroes from this world, and you are? The figure in the black hoodie stood and thought for a moment. Slowly he lowered his hood. He looked at Stain and spoke. Dabi, my name is Dabi, and that man was going to do something that threatened my family. Well, Dabi, what shall we do now? Will we fight, or will you give me a reason to spare your life? Fire slowly leapt up across Dabi, blue flames emerging from his arms. The alley was illuminated by in blue fury, a smile on his face. Why not both? Stain smiled, his long tongue emerging from his mouth. So be it, he said, reaching for his katana as he leapt towards Dabi. My arm. Why is my arm broken? One of the members of UA's hero course was standing in the middle of Gym Gamma, their arm shattered at multiple points. They turned to face the deflated form of their mentor. Yes, I forgot to mention, that might happen. The skeletal figure of Toshinori Yagi was standing behind his student, his eyes peering at the shattered arm of his successor. You forgot? How did you forget? I don't know, I guess since it never happened to him. Why is it hanging like this? It's floppy. Well, yes, let's go and see Recovery Girl and get you healed up, then we can see what One for All is doing to your quirk and how it's starting to change it. Wait, it also affected my quirk. Did I also forget to mention that? Yes. How do you forget stuff like this? Skill Might shrugged. I guess it's because I was born quirkless. Wait, what? 2 days later. You can do it, come on, Kirishima. Yeah, you can do it. Come on, Kirishima. Harder and harder and harder. The red-headed manly maniac's rocky skin became more and more jagged, becoming stronger and stronger from activating his quirk again and again. Yuo. Suddenly his skin softened, his eyes dulled and he collapsed onto the floor. Oh. His two cheering friends, Mina Ishido and Toru Hagakure, stopped encouraging him and rushed towards him, panicking over his collapsed form. Kirishima. You okay? The red-headed boy slowly turned his head to the side. Yeah, I'm fine, just need to try again. He began to push himself up but his arms gave out and Kirishima fell to the floor once again. Or maybe I should just rest. Kirishima fell asleep on the floor of Gym Gamma. Suddenly Yaoyorozu burst through the door. Guys, it's Tokoyami, he's awake. Everyone rushed out of the gym leaving a sleeping Kirishima on the floor. Ah, Kirishima, I have been looking for you. Slowly the boy opened his eyes and looked at the inflated form of his teacher. Oh hey All Might, what's up?